The story begins by the lake, as our hero finds the surroundings unfamiliar. He suddenly remembers he was driving along on his scooter when a vending machine ahead of him got loose, and it ends up smashing into him. He's surprised he's still alive, but he soon finds that he's unable to move. He suddenly hears his voice, welcoming customers to use him, and he realizes he was reincarnated as a vending machine. We learn he was actually a vending machine fanatic, so he is surprisingly happy about his new form. He admires his affordable products and sleek design, but he soon realizes his new form might be a problem. He wonders if it was thanks to God that he was turned into the thing he loved, and he decides to just accept it. He is able to say the standard things for a vending machine, such as insert a coin, and thanks for buying. He thinks about what else he can do, trying to understand his new body. He sees some writing, and he realizes it's the items he is selling. There are currently only 2 items, mineral water and corn soup. He hears a voice telling him that he can change the items by spending points, and he sees he has 1,000 points. He learns that points are converted from money, which are then used to replenish or change the goods sold, or even gain additional functions. After further investigation, he learns that the points allow him to keep different items at different temperatures, and he is also able to warm up frozen food. He checks out what other items he has, and he finds he has a range of items that he would buy from vending machines when he was alive. He decides to try changing his item to milk tea, so he spends 10 points, and the milk teas appear inside him. It seems he can gain 1 point per 100 yen, and as he learns more about himself, he finds he doesn't require electricity for power, but he consumes his points for power instead. He uses 1 point per hour, which means he uses 24 points per day. Since he still has 990 points, he can operate for about a month, but he thinks he shouldn't waste his points until he can get a more steady income. But he realizes he is in the middle of nowhere, and after a day, he starts to panic, thinking he is doomed because no one will ever use him. But at that moment, a giant frog appears. It approaches him, but it gets startled by his voice welcoming it. The frog starts attacking him with its club, and his durability gets lowered. He learns that if his durability reaches 0, he will break and become unusable. The frog keeps on attacking him, and he sees his durability rapidly decreasing. He notices there's a magic stat, so he's surprised there is magic in this world. He is able to repair his durability with his points, so he thinks he can just wait for the frog to get bored, but the frog suddenly calls its friends. Seeing the frog's axe, he starts to panic, and he tries to find a function that will save him, but there is nothing useful. The frogs keep beating him up, but he suddenly notices he can gain a blessing from God. He is able to choose from a number of different abilities, so he gains the barrier ability, and he's able to push the frogs away. He thinks he is invincible, but his points start decreasing rapidly as the frogs keep on attacking him. The frogs eventually get bored, and he manages to survive. He uses his points to repair his durability, and we see he is down to 311 points. A few days later, he still hasn't been able to sell anything, but a girl suddenly appears. She is on alert at first, but she notes how she is starving, saying she isn't cut out to be a hunter. It seems she was hunting the frogs, but she hasn't had any luck. She notices the vending machine, but she is unfamiliar with what it can do. She is startled when she hears his voice, welcoming her and telling her to insert a coin. The girl wonders what kind of coins it takes. She tries a copper coin, but it's not accepted, and he learns he needs to acquire the coin conversion function to accept it. He quickly learns the skill for 100 points, and his prices change, allowing the girl to realize it will cost her 1 silver coin. She thinks it's expensive, but she decides to try it anyway since she's starving. He becomes excited to finally have his first sale, and the girl chooses his soup item. She takes it out from him, and she is surprised it is still hot. She tastes the soup, and she finds it delicious, saying it's better than anything else that's around. He is overwhelmed with pleasure to bring her such joy, and the girl wonders what other items he has. She enjoys his milk tea as well, and she ends up buying a few more corn soups, so he ended up making about 6 silver coins, which converts to 60 points. The girl ends up falling asleep beside him, but he protects her with his barrier, seeing her as a precious customer. When the girl wakes up, she thanks him for all the food, and she is startled when she hears his voice. She wonders if he is able to talk. because she knows someone who invents tools that have magical power, so she wonders if he can only say certain lines. She notices he can understand her, and they come up with a way to talk, where he will say hello to answer yes, and thank you to answer no. She introduces herself as Llamas, and she starts trying to learn more about him. He can't tell her his name, so she decides to call him Boxo. She wonders if he is lonely, and she suggests moving him. He agrees to this, and the girl suddenly picks him up. He can't believe she is so strong, but he is glad to finally move. It turns out Llamas has the blessing of might, which explains her insane strength. She takes a break after a while, wanting to have some more corn soup, but he thinks the soup isn't very filling, so he decides to find her something else. Llamas is surprised seeing he can change his items, and she decides to try it out. It's a can of potato chips, and she finds it absolutely delicious, eating multiple cans, and he manages to recover back up to 320 points. They make it back to the village, and the guards wonder what she has brought back. She explains it as a magical tool that can grant items in exchange for money, saying she found it by the lake. She wonders if it's okay to keep, and the guards mention it's normal for whoever finds something in a dungeon to become its rightful owner, and Boxo wonders if they are in a dungeon, but thinks it's not possible because he is able to see the sky. The guards are surprised he can talk, so they think he could be sold for a high price, but Llamas says she is taking him to meet her friend. The guards try buying from him, and they are instantly impressed, going on to try all of his items. They tell Llamas to bring him around once in a while, and Boxo thinks business is looking up. They get inside the village, and Llamas notices a girl being bullied. She beats up one of the thugs, but we see that despite her strength, she struggles to land a hit on the men. The men decide to run away, and Llamas checks up on the girl. Llamas goes to the inn, and her friend Monami rushes to her, glad that she returned unharmed. It seems Llamas was left behind by some other hunters, but Monami tells her she has helped her spread bad rumors about them. She turns her attention to Boxo, and she thinks Llamas has brought back more junk, but Llamas claims he is super useful. As Llamas sets him up outside, Monami knows she wants to go to the surface to show Boxo off to her friend, but Monami wonders how she will pay for the transfer circle. Despite being able to see the sky, they are apparently in a dungeon called the Clearflow Lake. It seems a transfer circle is required to leave, but it seems Llamas has spent all her money on his items. Monami tells Llamas to make some money working at her inn, and she hopes Boxo will also help to attract customers. The people are soon attracted by how good his items are, and he is able to sell quite a lot. At night, Llamas takes him over to the guards at the gate, but they eventually get bored of his items, so he thinks it's time he added some new items. It seems he has been able to sell over 400 items, and he now has over 3,000 points. He suddenly glows, and the guard is surprised to see there is a new item. It costs 3 silver coins, but the guard is excited to try something new. They wonder how to eat it, but there are luckily instructions on the can. It turns out to be stew, and the guards are impressed by the delicious flavors, wanting to buy even more. After a few days, word about his new item spreads around the village, and it seems to be a big hit. But during the day he makes it unavailable, so he doesn't compete with the inn's restaurant business. The girl that Llamas saved approaches him, but she gets startled by his voice, so she throws a rock at him and runs away. Their days continue, as Llamas takes him over to the guards at night. She talks to him as they walk, and she hopes they can talk for real one day, which is why they need to get to her friend on the surface. Llamas is glad to have found him, and he thinks that being reincarnated as a vending machine isn't so bad. The next day, Boxo is terrified when he finds himself confronted by a bear, but the bear actually turns out to be the director of the Hunters Association. He is impressed seeing Boxo, and he is there to ask for their help. He mentions that they are planning to attack the base of the frog monsters, and he wants them to come along. Llamas wonders why he wants to bring Boxo since he can't fight, but the director says his ability to provide warm and ready-to-eat food on the go would be invaluable for the hunters, and he promises to keep them safe. Llamas isn't too sure, but Boxo thinks if they ignore the frog monsters, it might end up being dangerous for the village, so he agrees to go. They head off 3 days later, and we learn that it seems to be breeding season for the frogs, so there are an abnormally high number of them, and according to the director, they are making sure to protect the transfer circle in their village, because it's the key to getting in and out of the dungeon. Besides the hunters from the village, there are also a group of hunters known as the Misfits who are joining in on this raid, excited to make some money. The hunters take a break and Llamas sets Boxo down. She is approached by one of the hunters, who tells her not to be so worried because they are there to protect them. He is interested seeing Boxo, and Llamas explains how to use him. The man decides to try it out, picking out a lemon tea, and he is impressed by the packaging. The man tries the drink, and he finds it delicious. He wonders where it all comes from, but Llamas mentions Boxo seems to just refill himself. The man becomes even more interested, so he calls over his vice captain Filomena. She addresses him as Captain Kelroy, and Boxo is surprised to learn that he was the boss. Kelroy calls Filomena an expert about magic tools, so he asks her if she knows anything more about Boxo. She takes a look at him, but she ends up sensing no magic power from him, saying he just seems like a block of iron. Kelroy mentions how he magically seems to refill himself, thinking the items could be coming from another dimension, and Filomena suggests it could be the power of a blessing, but she finds it unlikely. Kelroy thinks it's a mystery, but decides to just be thankful to have him there. The director tells them they are camping for the night, and Boxo thinks it's his time to shine. Everyone lines up to buy from him, and we see he has added cup noodles for this expedition. Everyone finds it delicious, and Boxo takes note of a girl that seems to have a big appetite. Llamas gets to know her, and she introduces herself as Sui. Later at night, the director joins them, and he tells Llamas the frog den is about 3 hours away. He gives her the choice to either stay at the camp, or join the hunters on the battlefield. Llamas is okay with going since she is a hunter herself, but she worries about Boxo. However, Boxo says he doesn't mind, so they agree to join the battle as well. The next day, they reach the frog base, but there is a thick mist, and they are walking through mud. The director tells them to attack, and we see the hunters taking out the frogs. Kelroy tells his team they will get paid extra the more they kill, so they get fired up. Llamas wants to do her best, but Boxo worries for her, because she has trouble landing her hits. A frog suddenly jumps at her, but she easily blows it away. She is surprised she landed a hit, and it seems having Boxo on her back is giving her better balance. We see the Misfits team taking out the frogs, and Filomena uses water magic to take out 3 at once. But even more frogs appear, and Kelroy finds it strange that there are so many. We see they are surrounded, and Boxo starts to get worried. The frogs charge at them, and Sui protects Llamas, but there is suddenly a frog that lunges for Sui. Llamas prepares to protect her, but Boxo's barrier blows the frog away. The girls are confused seeing the barrier, wondering what's going on, but Boxo is glad he protected them. He buys a new ability for 1,000 points to help expand his field of view. Llamas tells him to watch her back, and Kelroy compliments her on her strength. Llamas blushes hearing this, and Boxo warns her they are being attacked, but she is too distracted to hear him, so he ends up using his barrier again to blow them away. Kelroy is surprised seeing the barrier, and Llamas claims it must be Boxo's power, which makes Kelroy even more interested in him, but Boxo feels he might be dangerous. They end up beating all the frogs, and Kelroy tells his team to cut their tongues so they can get paid by the association. Filomena tells him to help, saying it's gross, but Kelroy claims he became the captain so he wouldn't need to deal with that, causing his team to call him a tyrant. They wonder what they should do next, and Kelroy suggests they could help out on the front lines. Filomena reminds him their job is to protect Llamas and Boxo. Kelroy wants to make more money, saying he can give them all a bonus, and Filomena suggests it's up to Llamas. Kelroy begs Llamas to go, and Llamas is happy to help the hunters on the front lines. They take out some more frogs, and there are a bunch of hunters that are injured. Llamas carries them to the wagon, and Boxo thinks about how he can help. He comes up with an idea, and he decides to give them some drinks for free. The hunters are glad to have him, and the director thanks Kelroy for coming to their rescue. The director notes that there were twice as many frogs as expected, and Llamas wonders how it's possible. The director thinks it must mean that the Frog King has arisen, and Boxo imagines how strong it could be. The director asks for Kelroy's help to defeat it, and he tells Llamas to stay behind to help treat and feed the wounded hunters. Later that night, Llamas gets called away to help some of the other hunters, but there is a shady man that approaches Boxo. Boxo realizes he is after his money, so he gives him a free drink. But as the man tries to grab it, he burns the man's hand with a hot soup. Boxo laughs at him, but the man prepares to bust him open. However, Llamas returns just in time, and she ends up knocking him out, and the man is restrained. There is a disturbance in the distance, and the Frog King suddenly appears. The hunters wonder why it's there, and they all start to panic. Llamas loads Boxo on the wagon, but the pigs are too scared to move. Llamas ends up letting them go, and the hunters wonder what she is doing. But she ends up trying to pull the wagon with her strength. Boxo wonders what he should do, thinking his barrier isn't enough to save everyone. He tries to think of a way to slow down the monster, looking through his item list for ideas. He ends up buying Coke, and Llamas thinks he has a plan. They grab the Coke, and he buys the form change function, turning himself into a candy machine. He is filled with Mentos, and Llamas wonders what she needs to do. He struggles to explain his plan since he can't talk properly, so he just keeps telling her to insert coin. She doesn't understand what he is trying to tell her, and the Frog King approaches. The hunter thinks he must be broken, but Llamas can tell Boxo is trying his best. There's nothing Boxo can do, but the thief suddenly wakes up, seeing the Frog King, and he demands to be freed, not wanting to die. But a hunter stuffs his mouth to shut him up, but he starts to choke, so they give him some of the Coke, causing him to explode. This gives Llamas an idea, and she figures out Boxo's plan. She explains it to the other hunters, and they end up using the Coke to blast the frog in its eyes. Kelroy and the director make it back in time, and they manage to take out the Frog King. They all celebrate, and the director apologizes to Llamas for putting her in danger, and he thanks Boxo for saving them all, telling them their mission is complete. As they head back, they suddenly notice that the village was attacked. Llamas rushes back to the inn, but it's been completely destroyed, and she worries about Manami. However, Boxo manages to calm her down, and Llamas thinks Manami could have evacuated to the Hunters Association. We see a giant double-headed snake, which was responsible for all the damage, and Llamas finds the two guards. She asks about Manami and her mother, and the guards tell her they are safe inside. We see that the building is well guarded, because it's where the transfer circle is located. Manami welcomes Llamas back, and they are happy everyone is safe. Boxo thinks about helping the people, and he decides to give them all free items for the day. At night, we learn that the snake is normally the natural enemy of the frog monsters, and Boxo is surprised to see the villagers cooking it up for food. There's a huge line since he's giving away free items, and it even helps attract some new faces. He thinks it will make him even more money in the long run, and we see he has even started selling alcohol. Llamas gets a bit drunk, happy that everything turned out well. She is also happy seeing everyone gathered around him, and she thinks he has become an integral part of their lives. The next day, the people start the repairs, and Boxo is set up at the association, where there are plenty of people around. Llamas visits him, mentioning that the director gave her a personal request, and it's to help with removing the rubble. She takes Boxo over to the inn, and she starts moving the rocks, easily smashing them into pieces. Her cart gets full, and she prepares to take it to the dump, but Kelroy suddenly appears. He offers to treat everyone to some of Boxo's items. Llamas gets excited, and Kelroy tries to recruit her to his team along with Boxo, but she instantly refuses. Kelroy walks off rejected, and Llamas says she's too busy with helping rebuild the inn. The next day, Boxo is visited by a woman and her assistant. Llamas wonders who they are, and the woman introduces herself as Akawi from the exchange house. She mentions they are there because it seems the village is low on silver coins. Llamas thinks it must be because Boxo only takes silver coins, and he can't believe she ratted him out. Akawi proposes exchanging for her gold coins, but Boxo isn't able to do it since he doesn't have an exchange function. Llamas suggests they could just buy something with a gold coin, and they will be able to get the silver coins as change. They end up with a whole chest full of silver coins, but the thief sees their exchange. Later on, we see an old man in front of Boxo, and we see he has added a lottery function. The man is devastated when he loses, wanting to spin again, but he ends up getting dragged off by his wife. The young girl Sayori visits with a bunch of rocks to cause trouble, but she drops them all when she is startled by his voice, and she gets carried off by some men. As she approaches again the next day, she is disappointed that her father is away. Boxo can tell she is feeling down, so he gives her a free juice, and she thanks him. At night, Boxo gets set up at the bathhouse, and we see that he also sells hygiene products like shampoo. And he seems to be a big hit with the furry creatures. The next day, the old man is back, and this time with his granddaughter. He teaches her about the lottery function, and the girl is excited to try. She actually ends up winning, and her grandfather can't believe it. She gets an item for free, but she ends up just giving it to her grandfather to make him happy, saying she had a great time with him, and it seems Boxo rigged it for her. The next day, the director approaches Boxo. He heard that Boxo now has the ability to disguise himself, so he asks him to hide out where a bunch of crimes have been taking place, so he can help identify the culprit. He ends up being set up, right outside the front of the association. Llamas wonders where he has gone, but Monami reminds her the director was borrowing him, so Llamas continues to help around the association. Boxo has a quiet day, but we see Sayori looking around for him. She runs into Llamas, and she wonders if she has given any more thought to her proposal. However, Llamas says she's not going to sell Boxo. Sayori says she would have enough money for the rest of her life, but Llamas refuses, saying Boxo is irreplaceable. Sayori wonders what Boxo truly is, but even Llamas isn't sure. She thinks that since he can understand and respond to everything, she sees him the same as another person, and Boxo is happy to hear she feels this way. Sayori declares she will get Boxo one way or another, but she leaves for the day, telling Llamas to take care of him until that day comes. Boxo reappears, and Llamas is shocked to see him, but she tells him she missed him, and she is excited to tell him about her day. The next day, we see Boxo as he gets wheeled around on a cart, but it turns out he has actually been kidnapped, and he wonders where he's being taken. A few hours earlier, we see Boxo getting approached by a group of men. They tell him they were hired by the director to help reinforce the walls, so they tell him the director wants him to go with them so he can help feed the workers. Boxo notices the shady guy that tried to steal from him, but he thinks he must be reformed since he's working for the director. He agrees to go with them, so the men load him onto their cart, but after 8 hours, he comes to the realization of what's really going on. He wonders how far they are going, and they eventually stop to have a break. While they are stopped, Boxo takes the chance to use his security camera to take photos of all of their faces. He's approached by the thief, and the man threatens him to give them food. Boxo refuses, so the man stabs him, causing him to take some damage. But the boss reprimands the thief, telling him not to damage the merchandise. The boss tells Boxo to hand over all his money, but Boxo refuses. They know Boxo is able to repair himself, so the boss tells his men to rough him up. The men start bashing into him, and although the damage isn't a lot, he wonders if there's anything he can do about it. He gets a notification that he can enhance his toughness by spending 1,000 points, and it instantly makes him tougher, reducing the damage from the attacks to 0. The boss notices that Boxo doesn't seem to be repairing, getting worried they may have broken him, but the thief assures him it's fine. Boxo gives them some drinks, and the man is relieved he is still working. They all try out the drink, but it turns out to be disgusting, because it was Boxo's lowest rated drink. They reach their base at night, and Boxo gets taken inside. They tell a woman to take a look at him, but they get scared as she approaches, so they just throw her the instructions and quickly run away. The woman starts talking to Boxo, and he wonders if he should answer honestly. The woman introduces herself as Hulami, and Boxo recognizes her as Llamas's friend. She's actually a magic item engineer, and it turns out she was also kidnapped. Boxo starts talking to her, and she is instantly impressed to see a magic item that can understand and speak with people. She reads the instructions, and she soon figures out how he can communicate. Hulami reveals she has experimented with trying to give magic items human intelligence, but concluded it's not possible with their technology, so she started thinking about putting a human soul into an item instead. Boxo is amazed she figured it out, and Hulami says she needs a drink from all her excitement. Boxo gives her one of his milk teas, and she finds it delicious. They keep on talking, and Boxo confirms he actually has a human soul and has memories of his past. Hulami wonders why he requires money, because normal magic items don't require any. Boxo decides to show her, transforming into his other form, and Hulami realizes he must use the money to gain additional functions. She wonders what else he can do, so he shows her his barrier skill. She thinks it's some kind of wall, but Boxo lets her pass through, and Hulami is amazed he can even use a blessing. but Boxo is impressed she is working everything out so quickly. Hulami goes to sleep, and Boxo wonders if the people in the village have noticed that he's missing. At that moment, the bandits return, wanting to get payback on Hulami for scaring them, but Boxo suddenly transforms, turning into a magazine dispenser, and he instantly attracts the men. The men become too distracted, and they all decide to head back to their rooms, saying they have business to take care of. The next day, a man comes in to give Hulami her food. Hulami is disappointed seeing a single loaf of bread, so Boxo decides to give her some of his food. He treats her to all kinds of different foods, and she thinks he is even better than a restaurant. Hulami is completely stuffed, but the boss enters, wanting to know what she has figured out. Hulami doesn't want to cooperate, but the boss tells her she has 2 days to figure out how to get Boxo's money, so Boxo thinks they need to find a way to escape before then. Hulami continues on with examining him, and their time is running out. Boxo thinks about making a distraction to give Hulami a chance to get away, but Hulami has a serious talk with him, telling him not to think about sacrificing himself, because the area is surrounded by monsters, so even if she got away, she wouldn't be able to survive. She gets tired, so she calls it for the night, but Boxo wonders what to do about their deadline. During the night, there is suddenly a commotion outside, so he quickly wakes Hulami up. They realize there's a fight going on outside, and they suddenly hear Llamas's voice. We see the fight outside, and Llamas calls for Boxo, charging into the building. Hulami is surprised that Boxo is friends with Llamas, and she thinks they should be fine to just wait to be rescued. But Hulami suddenly thinks they could be in trouble, because besides storing all their gold here, the bandits also have explosives. Boxo worries hearing this, and some of the explosives go off, causing the ceiling to come crashing down, but Boxo protects them with his barrier. Hulami wonders if he can hold the barrier forever, but he admits that he can't. He thinks he would survive being crushed since he upgraded his toughness, but he worries for Hulami. Hulami realizes that his ability must use money, so she points out the bandit's stash of gold. Boxo lets it through his barrier, and he jacks up the prices on all his items, while Hulami deposits all of the money into him. Boxo gains an insane number of points, and he thinks he'll be able to hold out until Llamas saves them, but Hulami suddenly collapses. Boxo realizes she can't breathe, because his barrier also stops air from getting in. He thinks about what he can do, and he suddenly transforms, turning into an oxygen vending machine. Hulami is able to breathe, and Boxo is glad he was a vending machine fanatic in his past, knowing that in 1965, there were oxygen vending machines because there were concerns about air pollution. Hulami thinks she would fall for him if he were a man, and even Boxo is charmed by her. Llamas makes it to them, and she is overjoyed to finally find him. She slips through the barrier, crashing into him, but she cries thinking she had lost him. She hugs onto him, apologizing for not watching him, and he is glad to be reunited with her as well. Llamas eventually realizes Hulami is also there, and Hulami is glad they got out safely. Filmina wonders why Kelroy helped out when there was no money involved. Kelroy says he's just a nice guy, but Filmina knows he is trying to gain a favor from Boxo, and Kelroy says they will achieve their dream by any means necessary. We see Llamas as a child, using her strength to catch fish with Hulami. Hulami thinks her parents will be happy, but we learn Llamas gets into trouble for constantly breaking things at home. She suddenly stands before Boxo, where she thanks him for saving her, but we see she is just dreaming, telling him not to leave her again. Hulami tells Boxo that after he was abducted, Llamas kept looking for him and didn't even sleep. She mentions their past, revealing that their village was wiped out and Llamas lost her parents. Despite having her strength, she was too scared to do anything, and it became her biggest regret. Boxo wants to do whatever he can to help her, and she dreams they'll be together forever. The next day, Hulami decides to stick around in the village, and Llamas heads off to do some work. Hulami and Boxo get approached by Sui's bodyguards. The man tells them that Sui will be coming to make a request from them, and he hopes that they will accept the request. The men panic as they hear Sui approaching, so they quickly leave. Sui introduces herself to Hulami, and she asks for a favor. Hulami wonders what she wants, and Sui explains there is a gathering of merchant families where they reveal their newest magic items. The organizer is her rival Kana, and she gets mad even thinking about her. Hulami thinks it sounds interesting, and Boxo agrees as well. They go over to the event, and Boxo looks around for Sui's rival. Sui approaches her, and they pretend to get along. Kana checks out the competition, looking over at Hulami and Boxo, but she is confident she will win. The presentations begin, and we see the first participant show off his latest invention. He introduces it as a magic weapon that can transform. Hulami thinks it's a good idea, but it turns out he is just putting different attachments onto a stick, and everyone is disappointed. After a number of other lackluster presentations, Hulami starts to get bored, but it comes to Kana's turn. Her engineer reveals a robot, claiming he has succeeded in a dream of giving intelligence to a magic item. Hulami is shocked, thinking he must have put someone's soul inside the robot, and she notes that it's banned by the Magic Engineer Association because it's too dangerous, mentioning that a whole town was destroyed in the past because of it. The robot impresses everyone as it can follow commands, but it suddenly starts to go wild, wanting to kill everyone. The man tries to turn it off, but he gets thrown away, as the robot blames him for awakening it. Hulami orders Sui's men to help out, but they all get thrown away. Hulami jumps onto it, targeting its magic seal, and she manages to turn it off, apologizing to the soul that was used. The crowd suddenly realizes who Hulami is, and we learn she has quite the reputation for being a troublemaker. Hulami claims all her incidents were from her youth, and Sui declares her victory over Kana. After some time, winter arrives and we see all of the town's restaurant owners in a meeting led by Munami. They discuss the arrival of a popular chain restaurant, and they worry about going out of business. Munami reveals Boxo as their secret weapon, and she bribes him by giving Lamas a discount at the inn. We see the restaurant has opened up, and they have a huge line of people wanting to get in. Lamas and Hulami go and try out the food, but they find it's pretty average, thinking it doesn't even compare to Boxo's food. Lamas thinks the food is bland, and Boxo thinks that it's because seasoning isn't cheap in this world, but this gives him an idea. In Munami's next meeting, she thinks that they need to come up with a new menu to save their customers. They all bring out their latest creations, and Lamas and Hulami test the food. They give suggestions on how to make it better, while Boxo transforms, giving them a sample of what it should taste like. All the owners rush to get advice, and they become inspired by Boxo's samples. We see that at the chain restaurant, all the owners have set up food stalls outside, offering their new dishes, and they start to attract the people waiting in line. The people are amazed by all the new foods, turning out to be a huge success, and the restaurant ends up going out of business and closing down. As all the owners celebrate, Kelroy approaches Boxo. He tries to invite Boxo on a campaign, but Boxo instantly declines. Kelroy reminds him how he helped out when he got abducted, and Boxo considers changing his mind, but Kelroy tells him to talk it over with Lamas. Hulami thinks that most people would want the opportunity to join Kelroy's group, and she wonders what Lamas wants. Lamas says she wants to fight so she can get stronger, but Hulami wonders if she is after revenge, and Boxo wants to help her in any way he can, turning into a flower machine, and he cheers Lamas up. Boxo thinks about what Hulami told him about Lamas's past, and as spring approaches, when the hunters will become active again, he wants to be able to protect her. He is suddenly approached by a girl, but she quickly hides behind him as the guards approach. The guard gets some stew, and his friend wonders why he keeps eating the same thing, but the guard insists it's his favorite. We learn that the girl is into him, but she's just too shy to make a move. Boxo decides to help her out, transforming into a new form and giving her some vegetables. He gives her a bunch of other ingredients as well, and she realizes he is telling her to cook the man his favorite stew. The girl thanks him, and we learn they ended up getting together. Spring arrives, and it seems Lamas and Boxo have agreed to go on Kelroy's expedition. We learn they are going to check up on the crocodile monsters, since they are one of the 3 main monster factions in their area, and after dealing with the frog boss and the twin-head snake, they are going to check to see if the crocodile monsters have over-multiplied as well. The group prepares to leave, and Hulami reveals she is also going, saying that the director hired her to perform an ecology survey. They head off, and Kelroy is glad to finally get out of the town. They are suddenly attacked by some frog monsters, but the group easily fights them off. Lamas wants to get involved, and she thinks about throwing rocks. Boxo thinks throwing would be a good use of her strength, so he gives her a reinforced bottle to throw. She gives it her best, but she ends up completely missing. The group stops for a break, and they enjoy all of Boxo's food. They are glad they don't need to hunt for their food. Boxo shows off his new function, adding on an emergency box, and it turns out to contain the parts of a portable toilet. The group thinks it's amazing, and Kelroy tries to take credit for it since he convinced Boxo to join, but the group doesn't buy it. They continue on, and Kelroy mentions they are entering the crocodile's territory. He decides to send Akka and Shiro to scout, so they head off while the rest of the group waits. When they return, they report that they found a group of around 30 crocodiles. Hulami mentions that a normal group is between 10 to 50, and Kelroy thinks that since there aren't an abnormally large amount of them, they can just leave them alone. But Filomena mentions that the crocodiles go for a high price, so she wants to take them out. Kelroy ends up agreeing, and they decide to rest up for the night. As they sleep, we see Hulami telling Llamas to be careful. She wishes there was something she could do for the fight, mentioning the crocodiles are weak to the cold, and Boxo suddenly turns into an ice machine. Hulami gets an idea, wondering how much ice he can make, and we see Boxo dumping ice into the river the next day. The crocodiles end up all getting out from the cold, and Kelroy thinks this is their chance. He asks Filomena to create a fog, but she says she can't cover such a large area. They wonder what they should do, and Boxo turns into another machine. He starts dumping dry ice into the river, and it creates fog over the whole area. Kelroy tries to take credit once again, but Filomena says Boxo is more useful than him. Kelroy gets depressed thinking he is useless, but they end up heading off to hunt the crocodiles. Hulami is left with Boxo, and she explains her real mission from the director is to investigate the appearances of the boss monsters. They are meant to be quite rare, but after 2 of them have appeared, she wonders if something is going on. There is suddenly a huge crash, and the group comes rushing back. We see Llamas unconscious, and they are being chased by the crocodile boss. Kelroy tells Hulami to jump on, but she doesn't want to leave Boxo. However, he pushes her away with his barrier, and Kelroy grabs onto her. Boxo transforms and starts making noise to grab the boss's attention. He upgrades his durability and his toughness, but he still gets blown away by the boss, and he loses 1,000 points from the hit. Boxo thinks his barrier won't be enough. He wants to protect the group, so he transforms once again, and he shoots some fried chicken lunches at the boss. The boss starts to eat it, so he spits out a whole mountain of them, but the boss ends up eating him in a single bite. Boxo finds himself inside the boss's stomach, and he notices his points are rapidly decreasing. He transforms into a laundry dispenser, attacking with Tide Pods, and it starts to give the boss a stomachache. Boxo knows it's not enough, so he turns into a gas machine, and he fills the boss's insides with gas. He then turns into his heating mode, and he summons a can into his microwave. Together with some paper, he heats it all up, and he manages to start a fire. He shoots it out of his barrier, causing an enormous explosion, and we see Boxo is the only thing that remains. The boss drops a special coin, but as he takes it, the ground suddenly splits, and Boxo falls through the ground. As he falls, he thinks about what he can do. He transforms into a balloon vending machine, and he starts inflating balloons, and he is able to fill his barrier full of balloons. However, it's not enough to slow him down, so he transforms into a cardboard vending machine and becomes much lighter. He finds there's a huge labyrinth beneath him, and he decides to use his camera to take some photos from above. He manages to land safely, and he notices the coin from the crocodile on the ground. He can't pick it up, so he thinks about unlocking some new functions. He is shocked to see he has over 1,000,000 points, and he realizes he must have got them from defeating the crocodile boss. He wonders what he can do with 1,000,000 points, and he sees he can level up his vending machine rank. He increases his rank to 2, boosting some of his stats and unlocking more options for his transformations. He transforms into a vacuum machine that you would see at a car wash, and he is able to suck up the boss's coin, but when he examines it, it doesn't seem to do anything at the moment. He suddenly starts flashing red, and he gets a warning that his transformation time for the day is about to exceed 2 hours. He quickly turns back to his original form, and he is shocked he had such a limitation. The day goes by, and he hasn't seen a single person go by, but he just enjoys his time in the sun, revealing that he added a new solar panel function that allows him to save his points when the sun is out. There are suddenly 4 bear creatures running toward him. It turns out they are being chased by pig fiends, and one of them is injured. Boxo decides to help them out, using his camouflage to hide. He then activates his barrier to shoot out drinks at the pigs, hitting them in the face and driving them off. The bears wonder what happened, and Boxo quickly reveals himself. They wonder what he is, but when he speaks, the bears are terrified and back away. Boxo thinks there is only hope, so he quickly transforms into a food machine and throws out a box of fried chicken. The bears admire the smell, and the one named Suko realizes he might be a box that sells food, but the leader Mikan worries it could be a trap. However, they just can't resist, and the one named Pell eats the chicken, finding it delicious. The other two rush over, buying another box, and they also find it delicious. Mikan can't resist, so he also joins in, and he can't believe how good it tastes. After eating a whole mountain of chicken, Pell thinks they should go home, but Mikan says they haven't found any treasure yet. However, Suko points out Boxo, thinking he is the best kind of treasure, but Boxo tries to say that he won't be their property. The bears are shocked when they hear him saying different lines, and they wonder if he can actually understand them. Boxo tries communicating with them, but in the end, Mikan can't work it out and thinks he is just saying random lines. They decide to take him back to the entrance, but he's way too heavy for them to move. Boxo thinks about turning into cardboard again, but thinks that would scare them off, so he adds wheels to himself instead. The bears push him along, and they approach the area where the pig fiends attacked them earlier. Boxo decides to show off his barrier, but the bears start freaking out. He lets them out of his barrier, but they start to find him suspicious. Boxo tries to communicate with them again, using a new function to display text, but the bears can't understand Japanese, so they aren't able to read it. The bears think they should just leave him behind, but Boxo quickly drops more fried chicken, and they easily change their minds about him. The pig fiends suddenly come rushing over, and Boxo turns into a gas pump, but realizes he can't move his nozzle. However, the ground shakes, and the nozzle comes loose, allowing him to spread his gas, causing all the pigs to slip. But the ground keeps shaking as an enormous flaming skeleton appears. Mikan recognizes it as the boss, and he tells the others to run. They rush away with Boxo, and the boss ends up eating the pigs. They manage to get away, and they end up spending the night in the labyrinth. While the bears sleep, Boxo notices some flaming skulls approaching. He makes as much noise as he can, and he manages to wake up the bears. Mikan says they need to deal with them, or they could end up calling the boss. They wonder how to fight them, and Boxo quickly gives them water. The bears throw water on the skulls, and Mikan is able to finish them off. Pell thinks Boxo is amazing, since he helped them with exactly what they needed, and Boxo thinks this is his chance to communicate with them, but Mikan says it's just his imagination, saying it was a coincidence. The next day, they continue toward the entrance, but they hear a fight going on up ahead. Kuro runs up to scout ahead, and he returns to tell them it's safe, saying he saw the director, as well as an abnormally strong girl. We see Llamas as she defeats a pig fiend, calling out for Boxo. She sees him approaching, and she instantly rushes to hug him. We see Hulami and Kelroy's group are also with her, and they are glad to finally find him. The bears greet the director, and the director thanks them for saving Boxo. Mikan wonders what Boxo is, and the director introduces Boxo as a resident of their village. Mikan wonders how a magic item could be a resident, but the director explains that Boxo can understand them. Mikan finds it hard to believe, pointing out how Boxo just says random lines, but Llamas explains their communication system, and the bears are shocked to learn that he could understand them the whole time. They manage to get out of the labyrinth, and the director reveals they had a second objective besides saving him, mentioning that Kelroy's group wants to defeat the skeleton boss. Kelroy explains that everyone in his group has a goal, and they are determined to achieve them no matter what. He goes on to explain the legend of the labyrinth, where it's said that if you can reach the lowest level and meet the requirements, you can have any wish granted. Llamas wonders about the requirement, and Kelroy believes it's the coin that drops when a boss is defeated. Boxo is surprised to hear his coin is so valuable, and Kelroy says that among his group, they have 6 wishes that they want to achieve. They currently have 3 coins, and they have been going around to different areas whenever they hear that a boss has appeared. Kelroy knows he got a coin from the crocodile boss, and he suggests working together, saying it would even be possible for him to turn into a human. Llamas gets excited hearing this, and they end up agreeing to join Kelroy's group, but Boxo isn't quite sure about turning back into a human. They prepare to head back into the labyrinth, and the director shows them a map to prepare. Boxo notices it isn't quite accurate, and he manages to show the pictures he took when he was falling down. The director is impressed, and promises to give him a bonus when they get back. They head into the labyrinth, and they discuss the plan to defeat the skeleton boss. The director reveals a trap that was discovered by some other hunters, and they plan to lure the boss into the pit. Kelroy thinks it probably won't be enough to take it out, and its flaming body would melt any attacks that they try, so he thinks about using Filmina's water magic and Boxo's water to fill the pit, hoping to put out the boss's flames. He asks Boxo if he can produce enough water, but Boxo thinks if he just used his water bottles, it could take days to fill up. But he suddenly gets an idea, transforming into a pressure washing machine, and he's able to let out much more water. Everyone is impressed, but Boxo thinks about his limited transformation time. After 2 days, Boxo sprays water as a power washer for 2 hours each day, and has the bears throw in water bottles the rest of the time. Meekin gets lowered into the pit to check the water level, but it seems the ground has absorbed all of the water, and none of it is left. The group becomes discouraged, but Boxo comes up with another plan, turning into an ice machine, and he starts dumping ice into the pit instead. At night, Llamas asks Boxo if there's something on his mind, because she has noticed that his light flickers when he's thinking. She asks how he feels about becoming a human, but Boxo isn't sure. He wants to be able to talk to her as a person, but as he thinks about becoming a human, he worries he will become useless. Everyone finds him incredibly useful, but he thinks that without his vending machine powers, people will no longer need him, so he's scared of this reality. Llamas tells him how she wants to be able to talk with him and cook for him, giving him the courage to want to be a human. After another few days, the pit is finally ready. Hulami wonders if the ice will be enough, thinking the boss's flames might instantly vaporize it all. The boss appears, and it starts to approach them. Meekin triggers the trap, and the boss falls right in. Hulami warns everyone to watch out for steam, but nothing comes out, and Meekin points out that the fire is out. Hulami wonders how it's possible, and it turns out Boxo actually filled the pit with dry ice, which actually caused the pit to be filled with carbon dioxide, and since fire can't burn without oxygen, its fire was extinguished. The group starts throwing rocks down at the boss, but Meekin thinks it's not enough damage, suggesting that they throw something heavier. Kelroy's group starts looking at Boxo, thinking they could throw him, but Llamas refuses to let them do that. Kelroy thinks they could jump down and defeat it, since its flames are gone, but Boxo warns them not to go, because they won't be able to breathe. But the boss starts climbing up, and Kelroy thinks they have no choice but to jump in. Boxo starts to panic, and he suddenly transforms into a magazine dispenser. Llamas becomes flustered, and she ends up slapping him, causing him to go flying, but he thanks her as he transforms into his heaviest form, smashing right through the boss. The boss is defeated, and Boxo sucks up another boss coin. He uses his balloons and his cardboard form to fly out of the pit. Meekin closes the trap, and Boxo lands safely. Llamas tells him he was too reckless, but Boxo is just glad that everyone is safe. Kelroy asks about the boss's coin, and Boxo prepares to give it to him, but Hulami grabs it first, saying that the coin rightfully belongs to Boxo. Kelroy agrees, and he offers to buy it for 100 gold coins. Boxo can't believe he offered so much, and he thinks he doesn't need more than one, so he agrees to sell it to Kelroy, and the group heads back to the village. They stop by the Hunters Association branch near the labyrinth, and Kelroy's group leaves using a transfer circle. But Llamas and Hulami stay behind, because the director gave them a mission to survey the perimeter of the labyrinth. A hunter named Miguel enters, and all the girls are instantly charmed by him. Even Llamas thinks he must be some sort of hero, and Boxo gets a bit jealous. He asks for a map of the labyrinth, and the girls tell him it will take a few days to give him an updated map, so he decides to come back another time. At night, we see that Miguel isn't quite the hero Llamas was thinking about, and we learn he only came to the labyrinth because he heard there weren't many people. He bumps into Boxo, and it turns out he gets nervous just talking to people. He doesn't know why everyone stares at him, finding it scary, and Boxo is surprised to see this is what he's really like. He starts having a nervous breakdown, and Boxo feels bad for him, so he gives him a drink to help him calm down. The next day, Llamas tells Boxo that Miguel is joining them on their job. They head off together, but when Llamas tries to get to know Miguel, all he can do is play it cool and agree. When Hulami asks him questions as well, he gets nervous and ends up running off to guard the rear instead. Boxo feels bad for him, but it seems Miguel is trying to improve his communication skills. After a week of traveling, Llamas seems to be feeling unwell. Hulami worries about her, telling her to ride on the cart, but Llamas decides to keep going. However, she suddenly gets weak, but Miguel catches her just in time. They stop for a break, and it turns out to be Llamas' time of the month. Boxo thinks about what he can do to help, and he turns into a hygiene product dispenser. Hulami wonders what his item can do, but when she sees how absorptive it is, she realizes how to use it. After that, Boxo even turns into a washing machine, and he takes care of all of Llamas' clothes. After 2 weeks of traveling together, Miguel has started warming up to the group, finally able to eat with everyone. Meekin smells something up ahead, and he tells the group to stop. Pell senses it as well, and he can tell there is a group of men up ahead. Hulami finds this strange, because there shouldn't be anyone out in the middle of nowhere. Miguel gets nervous hearing this, and he tells the group that the men are probably after him, so he thinks he should leave so he doesn't cause them trouble, but Llamas doesn't want to let him go. Hulami wonders why he is being targeted, but Miguel isn't able to say. Hulami tells him there's no need to worry about their safety, because Boxo will be able to protect them. Boxo shows off his barrier, and Hulami tells him to test it, telling him to stay if Boxo can block his attack. Miguel agrees to this, and he prepares to go all out. He unleashes a lightning dragon, but the barrier is able to stop it. It does 500 points worth of damage, and Boxo is shocked it was so much, thinking it was almost as strong as the crocodile boss's attack. They continue on foot, and Miguel can sense that there are 3 swordsmen and 2 magic users. Llamas is amazed he can sense them from so far away, and we see the men approaching them. The leader reveals they are there for Miguel's life, and he wonders if Llamas and Meekin are his companions, but Miguel says they are unrelated, telling the man to leave them alone. The man agrees not to harm them if he doesn't resist, but Miguel doesn't trust him, so he decides to fight. Llamas and Meekin run off, drawing the 2 magic users. The mages attack, but Boxo blocks it with his barrier. He then transforms into his washing mode, and Llamas sprays the men with water. She then attacks with soap, blinding their vision, and she easily finishes them off. Miguel fights against the leader, but in an instant, he is able to take him out. Miguel thanks Llamas for her help, and he tells them to get the others while he gets information from the men. When they regroup, Miguel isn't able to say why he's being targeted, and he thinks it's too dangerous to keep traveling together, so he thinks it's time they part ways. But Llamas suggests he should join Kelroy's group, saying they don't care about a person's past as long as they are strong. Miguel agrees to get in touch with them, but when he leaves, he just can't handle meeting more people. The group makes it back to the village, but when they check in at the guild, the clerk finds it strange because he thought Boxo was already back. It turns out that at the closed-down chain restaurant, there are some vending machines, but when they try it out, it's actually just a person inside, and they are just selling the food from the restaurant. Llamas and Hulami aren't impressed, and after a week of Boxo being back in the village, the restaurant is once again out of business. Munami holds another meeting with the restaurant owners, and she suggests holding an eating competition. The repairs to the village are almost complete, so she thinks the contest would be a good way to attract more people. The other owners think it's a good idea, and they decide to hold it in 2 weeks' time. But after a week, we see the restaurant owners asking Boxo for help, and Hulami wonders if there's a problem with the contest. Munami says it was all going great, until they realized that Sui and the band of bears would be entering, and they are all known for their insane appetites, so the restaurant owners think they are going to go broke running the competition. Llamas wonders if Boxo can help them, and he ends up thinking of giving the contestants cola, because the bubbles will fill them up. Llamas thinks the contestants might complain, because the people drinking water will have an advantage. The owners decide to market the drink before the event at a higher price, and then on the day of the contest, they'll give it out for free, so the people will be more likely to want it. They all thank Boxo for his help, and Munami hopes he can continue to help if they have any more problems. On the day of the competition, we see the event has attracted a large amount of spectators, and Munami reveals there were so many entries that they need to have 2 preliminary rounds, with the top 5 of each group moving on to the finals. The first group of contestants take their place, and we see the band of bears are in this group. Munami tells them they need to finish all the food before the time runs out, but after just a moment, the bears have already finished, taking 4 of the slots, and one of the hunters take the final spot. In the next group of contestants, we see Sui, and even Llamas is giving it a go. Munami starts the round, and Sui seems to be quite relaxed, but she devours her plate, and she's the first to finish. The time starts to run out, but we see Llamas manages to finish just in time. They move on to the finals, and Boxo has unlocked a new form, playing music as a jukebox to set the mood. The contestants prepare to eat, and Munami tells them that whoever eats the most during the time limit will be the winner and get a special prize. They all start eating the food, and we see Sui easily devouring the first dish. The second dish is a fruit crepe, but she eats it all in a single bite. The bears manage to keep up with her, but she's just too fast, and she ends up winning the competition. She is given her prize, but when she opens it, she finds it's empty. However, Munami reveals that the prize is being able to use Boxo, and he will do anything she wants for a day. Boxo is surprised to hear this, but Munami begs him to go along with it and help her out. The next day, Sui brags to Akka and Shiro about her prize. Kelroy gets excited, thinking they can use Boxo on Monster Hunt, but Sui says she isn't planning on sharing him, and she has other plans. They head into the original dungeon, and they reach a small house. There are a bunch of kids that come out to greet her, and her master Mia welcomes her back. Sui shows off Boxo to the kids, and they all try out his food. Boxo is happy seeing all their smiles, and he even turns into a balloon machine, giving them all balloons. After that, Llamas plays with them, spraying them with water, and Boxo does their laundry afterward. Sui tells them to take a bath while they wait, but they find they are out of hot water. Mia thinks they will need to skip baths for that day, but Boxo comes to the rescue, and he is able to fill it up with hot water. They all have a relaxing bath together, and Mia thanks Boxo for his help. At night, they have more of his food for dinner, and Llamas is glad they could make so many kids happy. After they all go to sleep, Sui thanks Boxo for everything that he did. She thinks it must have been expensive to give out so much food, and she promises to find a way to repay him, but he tells her it's not necessary. Sui goes on to talk about the original dungeon, saying it's the first place that everyone must go through, and the only way to leave is to make it to the transfer circle. There are many children that get abandoned here, and Sui reveals that her wish is for everyone here to be happy. Meanwhile, we see a group of men approaching, and it seems they are after Boxo, hearing he can produce unlimited food. Boxo thinks about waking everybody up, but he worries it could put the children in danger. So he transforms into his dry ice machine, creating a fog which spooks the men, and then using his barrier, he fires ice at the men, causing them to run away. In the morning, Boxo shows the others what happened at night, and Sui recognizes them as former hunters who have a base nearby. Mia leaves Sui to watch the children, and she heads off to teach the men a lesson. Llamas wonders if she'll be okay by herself, but Sui notes that Mia is an expert hunter, and even Kelroy is afraid of her. Llamas meets back up with Kelroy, but she freaks out when she finds out they are planning a campaign in the Dead Zone, because it's an area filled with all kinds of skeletons and monsters, and Boxo is surprised to see her so scared. It seems Llamas is too terrified to go, so Kelroy wonders if there's any other way for them to take Boxo. Filmina worries about having enough food during a long campaign while they are looking for the boss, but Llamas suddenly claims she isn't a child, saying she's not scared, and she agrees to go with them. They prepare to head off, but Llamas notices Filmina isn't with them. They tell her she scares easy, so she isn't coming along, and Llamas realizes she was tricked. They arrive in the Dead Zone, and we see all the buildings are abandoned. Llamas tries her best to keep her cool, and they arrive at the inn. Llamas is scared seeing a picture of a woman, but when she appears behind her, Llamas instantly passes out. Kelroy takes her to one of the rooms, and Boxo is set up outside the inn. Hulami tells him more about how Llamas was even easier to scare when she was younger, and she can't believe Llamas hasn't already run away. At night, there are ghosts that appear, and Boxo becomes surrounded by all kinds of monsters, but they just seem to be wandering around. He puts up his barrier just in case, and he decides to try out his undead repelling items. He starts off by throwing salt at them, but it seems to have no effect, so he transforms into a figurine machine, throwing statues and other religious items at the creatures, but that also does nothing. In the morning, Hulami checks on him, but is shocked when she sees all of his items on the floor, wondering what's going on. Sui and the others go out to explore, and Calroy also leaves to find more reinforcements. Boxo is approached by the innkeeper, and she wonders what he thinks about the monsters. She explains that they envy the living, which is why they didn't even bother attacking him, since he's just an object to them. Llamas is depressed, because she is still scared of the area, but Hulami tries to cheer her up, saying she will help her overcome her fears. Llamas gets excited by the idea, but when Hulami tells her to start by walking around the village, she's scared once again. Hulami tells her to buy some potions from the store, but when she goes to take Boxo along, Hulami tells her she needs to go alone. Llamas agrees to prove herself, but when she hears a door opening, she dashes right back, hugging onto Boxo. She claims her job is to carry him around, so she insists on taking him, and Hulami ends up letting her take him. Llamas tries her best, and Boxo realizes she's trying so hard to overcome her fears, just so they can be together. He wants to help her out, so he produces the smell of coffee to help relax her, and he plays music to calm her down. She shows off her newfound confidence to the others, and Hulami tells her she's ready for the next step, telling her to do it without Boxo, but she instantly refuses. Calroy returns, and we see he has brought back the band of bears, as well as Miguel. Boxo wonders if he'll be able to communicate in such a big group, but it seems he has improved. The group has a meeting, and Calroy reminds them that their goal is to defeat the boss of the area, the King of Souls, suggesting that they go out looking for it during the day. They head out exploring together, but after just a while, they are soon surrounded by monsters. However, the group is prepared and is easily able to handle them. After several more days, the monsters seem to just ignore Boxo, but there is suddenly a zombie boy that approaches him. It seems the boy wants his food, so he ends up giving him a drink, but the boy just bites the bottle because he isn't able to open it, but he manages to get through. The next night, the same boy comes back, so Boxo gives him another drink. He keeps coming back every night, and Boxo starts to enjoy his visits. One night while camping outside during their exploration, Boxo wonders how the boy is doing, but the boy manages to find him. However, Akka and Shiro are on watch, and the boy gets taken out. Boxo feels bad about this, but he knows it's not Akka's fault. They find he had a coin on him, and they wonder if he was trying to buy something. After some more time, the group has a lead on where the boss is. They start discussing their strategy. Calroy reveals that the Soul King is a magic user that can use multiple different elements. Hulami wonders how he plans to deal with it, but Calroy thinks Boxo's barrier would be the perfect defense against its magic. Boxo agrees with his plan, and they all have a toast before they head out. The group heads off, and they approach the Soul King's location. They scout from a distance and see the Soul King, but there are also countless monsters in their way. Calroy thinks they'll need to take them out before fighting the boss, but Sui thinks it'll be tough to fight so many. Boxo gets an idea, turning into a gasoline machine, and Hulami wonders what he's trying to tell them. She sprays out some of the gas, examining it, and they soon realize that it's flammable. The group prepares to fight, throwing bottles of the gas, covering all of the monsters, and the flaming skulls set everything on fire. The group charges through with Boxo's barrier, and they head straight for the boss. The Soul King attacks them with lightning magic, but Boxo's barrier manages to withstand it. Calroy and Sui attack, but the Soul King creates walls that stop the attack, and the walls even split up the group. Llamas and Boxo are by themselves, but Llamas charges at the boss. The Soul King blasts her with ice, but Boxo easily blocks it. The Soul King is surprised they can stop his magic, and he tries using wind to blow them away, but Llamas is able to withstand it, thanks to her blessing of strength. The boss tries to bury her, splitting the ground underneath her, and Llamas starts to fall, but Boxo quickly transforms into cardboard, and Llamas manages to jump back out just before the ground closes. The Soul King prepares to attack again, but he's suddenly interrupted by an arrow, and we see the others boosting Sui up over the wall. Llamas takes her chance, and she uses Boxo to land a finishing blow. The group celebrates their victory, but we see the Soul King on the floor cursing at them. Kelroy steps on him, preparing to finish him off, but there's suddenly a darkness from the sky as a black orb drops onto them. Everyone panics, and Boxo's barrier takes massive damage, but it eventually stops. Miguel and Kelroy get back up, but when Kelroy tries to grab his hat, there are vines that suddenly emerge, taking the Soul King's remains and forming an orb in the sky. The orb dissolves, and another skeleton monster emerges, but it seems to know Boxo is from another world. Llamas wonders who he is, so he introduces himself as the Netherlord. He examines the Soul King's coin, but finds no use for it and just throws it away. Llamas wonders what he is after, but the Netherlord says he's just hunting, just like they are hunting the dungeon bosses. Meanwhile, Miguel sneaks away, and he suddenly launches a surprise attack, but it has no effect and he gets blown away. Hulami rides in on the carriage, telling them all to run, and she throws a bottle of Boxo's gas. The Netherlord wonders what she's doing, but Sui follows up with a flaming arrow, causing an explosion. The group takes the chance to run, but the Netherlord blasts them, and he grabs Hulami, recognizing her as a threat. He grabs Sui as well, and he proceeds to shock them both. Llamas rushes to them, but she's too late, as the Netherlord drops them to the ground. Llamas is devastated at the sight, and she charges in, but the Netherlord avoids all of her attacks. Llamas wonders what they should do, and Boxo comes up with a plan, but he worries that it might not work. The Netherlord counterattacks with his magic, but Boxo stops it just in time. Llamas tells him that she believes in him, giving him confidence. Boxo transforms into his balloon machine, filling his barrier with balloons, but the Netherlord tells them it's futile, as it charges up his ultimate technique. Boxo shoots out Llamas from his barrier, but he uses his balloons as a distraction. Llamas takes this chance, and she lands a kick on the Netherlord's staff, managing to shatter it. The Netherlord decides to retreat, and he disappears with a cloud of dust. Llamas rushes to check up on Hulami, reminding her of their promise to stay together. Kelroy gets back up, and he quickly checks on Sui. He refuses to let her die, and he tries to give her CPR. Boxo realizes there's a chance to save them, and he turns into an emergency defibrillator. Llamas and Kelroy are confused by his new form, and Boxo thinks there's no time to explain how to use it, so he quickly spends his points to learn the telekinesis skill, and he starts moving it with his mind. Boxo also spends the rest of his points to boost his luck stat, to increase the chance of success, and he shocks Hulami to jumpstart her heart. Boxo worries he was too late, but she ends up waking up. Sui is also saved, and Kelroy is overjoyed. They make it back to the village, and report to the director. The director notes that he has only read about the Netherlord from old records, but believes he's one of the Demon Lord's generals. Boxo gets worried hearing this, thinking the Demon Lord would be even stronger. Llamas returns to the inn, where Monami instantly rushes to her, wondering if she's okay, after fighting against a monster that was stronger than a dungeon boss. News of the encounter spreads throughout the village, and all the people praise Boxo for saving Hulami and Sui. Meanwhile, we see Miguel as he is approached by the bears. They wonder what he plans to do next, and Miguel thinks about how he was defeated, but he swears to get even stronger so that he can protect his comrades. The bears are happy to hear this, and Mikan tells him that the director is even calling for backup, so there will be a ton of other hunters coming to help. But this only makes Miguel more nervous, since he still has trouble talking to new people. We see Kelroy reflecting upon the encounter. He notes that he was ready to give up his life for the sake of his wish, but after seeing Sui on the verge of death, he can't handle his friends dying, so he starts to reconsider his goal. But he's joined by the rest of his team, who say it was their own choice to follow him, so they tell him not to worry. The next day, we see Llamas walking with Boxo, but Boxo wonders where they are going. She ends up taking him back to the lake where they first met, and she reflects on everything they've been through together. She thanks him for always protecting her, but he thinks about how people were hurt in that last fight. However, Llamas tells him to focus on everything that he's done, and that it was all thanks to him that Sui and Hulami survived. Boxo is touched by how much she cares about him, and Sui and Hulami suddenly appear. Llamas wonders what they are doing there, and the two suddenly kiss Boxo to thank him. Llamas starts freaking out, but Hulumi tells her she should also thank him, since he has helped her the most. Llamas approaches Boxo, but she gets too embarrassed to do it. So Hulumi and Sui push her in, and she has a moment with Boxo. Llamas runs off, chasing after Hulumi, and Boxo is left thinking about how his life being reincarnated as a vending machine isn't so bad. We see Hulumi and Llamas with Boxo, who forgot that they're in a dungeon because he can see the seasons change when he looks at the sky. He thinks about selling ice cream when the weather is hot, but Miguel suddenly appears and asks Boxo to become his master. Boxo says hello there, so Miguel thinks he has been accepted as Boxo's apprentice, and the girls start teasing him, but he thinks he has nothing to teach Miguel. He starts cleaning Boxo, but Llamas mentions that she's in charge of cleaning him, so he apologizes for being intrusive. Director Bear joins them and invites them to attend an important meeting, which will be held in the Dead Zone. The dungeon's directors gather for the meeting, and Bear introduces Boxo and his friends to everyone, revealing that they survived an encounter with the Netherlord, who is the Demon Lord's left-arm general. The other directors see him as a threat, and Boxo recalls that he had to revive his friends by turning into a defibrillator because the Netherlords stopped their hearts. Boxo thinks they were lucky that nobody died, but they can't let the Netherlord run free, and he notices that Kelroy is also there. But Llamas wonders where left-arm general is, so Director Bear notes that the Demon Lord lives in a land to the north. He's considered the head, and he has minions who are ranked from the highest position called the right arm to the lowest rank, which is the left leg. The left arm is number 3 in the Demon Lord's forces, and the directors wonder what they should do, because the Netherlord attacked them inside the dungeon. Director Bear suggests hitting him with everything they've got, and everyone agrees with him, so they all decide to work together to take down the Netherlord. After some time, the aces from each area show up, and they approach Boxo and his friends. One of them buys water and soup from Boxo, who wonders why there's an elderly couple in the assault squad, and he realizes that a school director named Hoxie is also in the team. He recognizes her as the owner of an orphanage, and he knows that she taught Sui archery, but the elderly couple talks to her, and he can't believe they know each other. The ace hunters gather in the area, and they decide to have a party before going after the Netherlord, but one of them wonders what old people are doing there, thinking they aren't up to the task. Hulumi tells him to mind his manners, so he asks her if she wants to fight, but Kelroy joins them, and the man recognizes him as the leader of the Misfits, so he freaks out and crawls away. Kelroy notes that his party is out of commission, so he needs all the help he can get. Hoxie mentions that she's from the Origin Stratum, while the old woman Yumi reveals that she has the blessings of swordsmanship and healing light. The old man notes that his name is Shim, and he reveals that he knows magic, while Hulumi and Llamas also introduce themselves. Boxo realizes that they have a well-balanced party, and he isn't sure if their older members will perform well, but he's confident that Kelroy will make good calls. The next day, they split into several teams, and they search for the Netherlord, as Director Bear apologizes for getting everyone involved in such a dangerous task. But Yumi tells him there's no need to apologize, because they're all comrades, and she notes that she can sense monsters ahead. Hoxie shoots them with her arrows, and everyone's impressed that she was able to kill 3 at once, while Shim realizes that the monsters still haven't noticed them, so he blows them away with his magic. Yumi charges in, and she cuts down the skeletons in her path, so Director Bear realizes that they still haven't lost their touch. But they explain that they're no longer in their prime, so they aren't as powerful as they used to be, and Llamas thinks they're amazing, so she tells Boxo they should do their best to keep up. Everyone has dinner together, and they all think Boxo's food tastes amazing, so he's glad he's helping them with their morale. Llamas trains in the middle of the night, and Yumi tells her to lower her center of gravity because it will improve her power and accuracy. She decides to give it a try, and she realizes that it improves the power of her punch, but Yumi tells her she needs to get used to fighting without Boxo. He knows that she still can't control her strength, and having him on her back gives her just the right handicap, but she needs to learn how to use her strength without him. Hulumi thinks the Netherlord let Llamas go on purpose so that she could report to the authorities and bring an assault force together. She thinks he wants the ace hunters to gather in that stratum, but she notes that it's just a worst-case scenario, and she doesn't want to confuse everyone with her ideas, so she only tells Boxo. After that, they continue searching for the Netherlord, and they see another hunter team fighting his minions. He watches them as they fight, and we see Boxo's party behind him as Director Bear tells them to prepare for battle. Hulami tells Llamas to relax, because they have plenty of aces in the team, and Director Bear tells everyone to buy time until reinforcements arrive. They charge in, and they cut down the Netherlord's minions, while Boxo transforms into a power washer, and uses his telekinesis to cut down the monsters with his hose. Everyone obliterates the skeletons, but the Netherlord revives them, so Director Bear realizes that they won't stay down unless the Netherlord is defeated. He tells everyone to get away, because the Netherlord is gathering his magic power, so he'll probably use an explosion spell. The hunters run away, and he unleashes a devastating spell, which destroys everything in the area. We see that everyone was able to survive, so the Netherlord is impressed, realizing he shouldn't underestimate them. But he summons his minions, and Boxo realizes that he needs to do something, because they're at a disadvantage. The Netherlord knows that Llamas has the blessing of might, so she'll be able to harm him if she reaches him, and we see the real Boxo above him, because she threw him up there during the explosion spell. We learn that she's carrying a magic item made by Hulami, and he transforms into a massive ice vending machine as the Netherlord sees him approaching. So he uses his magic to stop him, but he struggles to lift him, and Boxo fills the ground with ice. We learn that he prepared the defibrillator before he transformed, and he uses it to electrocute the Netherlord, causing him to pass out. Boxo manages to crush him, and he returns to his original form, as Llamas asks him if he's okay. But they realize that the Netherlord is still alive, and he notes that the staff is precious, so he needs to retrieve it. He's impressed that they were able to defeat his left arm, but he notes that he has accomplished his goal, because the ace hunters have gathered in the area. He explains that if hunters or monsters die in the dungeon, it accumulates energy proportional to the power of the dead, and he plans to use it to create new monsters. So he prepares to kill everyone, and Hulami realizes that the other areas are defenseless, because all the ace hunters are gathered there. They make their way back to the village, because they need to protect everyone from the Netherlord, and they return to the Hunters Association. But we learn that Hoxie and Kelroy return to the Origin Stratum, and Director Bear's assistant tells him that a swarm of monsters invaded the village a few days ago. She notes that most of the inhabitants failed to evacuate, and they tried to activate the transfer circle, but it didn't work. He asks her about everyone's status, so she reveals that the people who can't fight are upstairs, while the hunters on guard duty are on the terrace. He tells her she has done well, but she suddenly collapses, and the guards and the team decide to help the hunters defend the association. Miguel follows them, and Shim notes that he'll use his magic to help them out, while Yumi mentions that her healing spell will come in handy. Llamas considers joining them, but Director Bear tells her to help him distribute meals, because the people haven't been eating well. Boxo thinks she isn't ready for battle yet, because she wants to find Manami, and he gives everyone food and water, so they all enjoy their meals. Llamas takes him to the second floor, where they continue to distribute food and drinks, and a girl named May asks her about Shim and Yumi, so she explains that they're both safe. She tells Hulami that Shim and Yumi's descendants are okay, but Manami rushes to Llamas, who's glad that she was able to escape from the monsters. Hulami tells Boxo that she wants Shim and Yumi to learn about the situation, and he decides to help her by changing his form, but they realize that the monsters are approaching. She sees that the village has been destroyed, but Boxo notes that they still have work to do, and the hunters start fighting the monsters. She tells Shim and Yumi that their descendants are safe, and they use their powers to defeat the monsters, while Miguel uses his sword skill to wipe them out. Boxo notes that he can't let himself fall behind, because everyone's doing their best, and Llamas realizes that the hunters are exhausted, so she carries them inside, and tells them to leave the rest to her. Boxo realizes that her motivation is back since she met Manami, and a girl named Shirley tells her it's time for a quick break. He gives her a drink, so she thanks him for being such an outstanding gentleman, and notes that it's too bad that he isn't a guy. Llamas notes that it's their turn to hold the line, so she tells Shirley to take a nap, and she leaves to fight the monsters. She grabs onto one of them, and uses it to send the other monsters flying, but Boxo realizes that the defensive wall is broken, thinking the monsters used the hole to get in. After she defeats the monsters, he realizes that she's already tired, so he gives her a bottle of water, and the other hunters mention that they've already recovered, so they rush outside. He wants her to take a break, but she wants to continue fighting, because she's determined to protect everyone. He recalls that her old village was destroyed by monsters, so he understands how she feels, but he knows that she might die if she doesn't slow down. So he decides to stop her at all costs, and thinks it's the perfect time to use the skill he's been practicing for a long time. He calls her by her name and tells her to stay back, but she freaks out, wondering when he learned how to talk. Llamas suddenly passes out, because her body has reached its limit, and Hulami reveals that she heard everything, so Boxo tells her he can talk a bit. She realizes that he can't speak fluently, because there's a limit to the syllables he can use, and we learn that he can only take the sounds from the lines he knows, and pronounce them in a different order. She mentions that she wants to learn more about him, but he thinks it isn't the time to enjoy their conversation, so he tells her to take him to the terrace. We see another wave of monsters approaching, but he creates cola bombs by combining Mentos with them, and uses them to take down the monsters. We learn that the horde retreats in the evening, and attacks late at night, so the hunters defend the association while the others are sleeping. The band of bears suddenly appear, and they tell Boxo to give them something to eat, so he gives them their favorite fried chicken. They gobble it up, and one of them mentions that they ran around the village looking for survivors, but they couldn't find anyone to save. He adds that the monsters are gathered near a huge hole in the wall, and they saw big ones approaching in the distance, but Boxo can't believe they were running around in a danger zone. Hulami thinks King Frog fiends might show up next, and the hunters are worried, but Miguel mentions that they should work together to repel the monsters. Boxo notes that he looks manly, but his fist is trembling, and the hunters discuss their battle plan, as Boxo gives him a drink, telling him he did a great job. Llamas tells Boxo they should protect everyone, and we learn that he has a plan, but he isn't sure if she'll go along with it. He tells her to put him on the front lines, and she's worried that the enemies might show up, so she refuses to do it. He begs Hulami to grant his request, but she tells him to call her by her name, and he notes that he doesn't have the sounds he needs to say it. But he realizes that she's just testing him, so he tells her she's cute, and she becomes flustered. Llamas is upset, and she asks him if he likes Hulami, but she knows that he has a plan, so she tells Llamas to let him try it. He transforms and flies using his balloons, and we learn that he has 100,000 points, because Director Bear gave him gold coins as an advance payment. He transforms into his ice vending machine form, and he fills the ground with ice, as he notes that the enemies are cold-blooded beasts, so they can't handle extreme temperatures. He sees the monsters approaching, and he isn't sure if his ice is working, but he uses his powers to create ice spikes, and launches them at the monsters. He realizes that his plan is working, and he continues to attack with his ice, planning to wipe out the monsters, but Hulami reminds him that his abilities consume money. He explains that he isn't worried since Director Bear paid him in advance, but he realizes that he's losing points fast, so he decides to retreat. He returns to Llamas, who's angry since he decided to go through with his plan, even though she told him not to do it. He thinks about keeping quiet so that she'll forgive him, but she knows what he's thinking, and she continues to scold him, but he knows that she's just doing it since she's concerned. The next day, Boxo gives everyone ice cream since it's hot outside, and they all think it tastes amazing. Director Bear begins the War Council, and he notes that they need to close the hole in the wall, so Hulami suggests using earth magic to do it. But he explains that they only have 3 people who can manipulate Earth, and they think they can use Boxo to block the hole, but she notes that he needs money to maintain his ice freezer form. The director thinks about using him to buy time while they repair the wall, but his assistant notes that they only have 60 gold, and Boxo notes that it's worth 60,000 points. But he recalls how he burned through his points when he fought the monsters, so he tells the director it's not enough. But Sayori suddenly joins them, and she mentions that she has an idea. They decide to form a party to retrieve the safe from her mansion, so that they'll have enough money to get Boxo to plug the hole in the wall. But when she sees her house, she realizes it was destroyed, so she starts crying, and Boxo notes that it's the first time he has seen her get emotional. She apologizes for losing her composure, and she leads everyone to her underground safe, as they note that the paintings in her mansion have been ruined, but she mentions that they're cheaper than they look. They're glad that she's back to her usual self, and they reach a hidden basement, where she opens a vault, which leads them to her family's treasury. They realize that she's ridiculously rich, but she knows that Boxo can't accept gold bars, so she lets him borrow all the gold coins in her treasury. He mentions her name as he thanks her, and she's glad that he can say her name properly, but Llamas is jealous, so he also calls her by her name. She's glad that he was able to do it, but Sayori notes that he can pronounce her name better, and he recalls that they don't get along because Sayori tried to take him from Llamas. She gives Boxo the gold coins, but she reminds him that it's just a loan, so the Hunters Association needs to pay her back. But he thinks she's just hiding her embarrassment, and he believes that she's actually a good person at heart. He notes that they put in 110 gold coins, so he now has 110,000 points, and he thinks it's enough to plug the hole in the wall. They return to the Hunters Association, but they realize that everyone's suffering because of the heat, so they flock to Boxo, telling him to give them something cold. So he gives them ice cream, and they're able to cool off. But he notes that the heat is getting worse, so they need to do something to improve the situation. Director Bear asks Boxo if he can change into his giant form with the money he has so far, so he reveals that he can maintain it for an hour. The director suggests attacking as the enemy pulls back in the evening, but Hulumi thinks it's better to make their move after the monsters withdraw, because they can use the cover of darkness to get into position. She thinks they should wait for the monsters to launch an all-out attack late at night, because they will leave the hole unguarded, and Boxo thinks her plan might work. The director thinks that the defenders will be exposed to danger, but he decides to go with her plan anyway, because he thinks it will increase their chances of success. As night approaches, they form a task force to repair the wall, and we learn that they'll be working with 3 Earth mages to complete their mission. Director Bear notes that Boxo's role is important, so he feels pressured, thinking he needs to live up to the hype. The director tells the guards to stay there in case they don't make it back, and he notes that Boxo left enough food for everyone. The group heads to the wall, but they encounter a group of monsters, and the director thinks they have no choice but to fight them. Shim suggests waiting for an opening, so they wait for the monsters to attack the association, and when they hear the hunters fighting, Llamas prepares to make her move. But Yumi tells her to wait a bit longer, and a monster sees them, so Shirley takes it out. Director Bear calls her the voluptuous figure, but she tells him to stop calling her by that name, and Boxo realizes that she used to be a hunter. Director Bear tells him it's time to fill the hole, so Llamas wishes him luck, telling him to come back alive. He's glad that she believes in him, and as he starts to fly, he gives her a drink and tells her he'll be back. He realizes that countless monsters are outside the wall, and he's surprised by how organized they are, but he knows that he doesn't have time to hesitate, so he immediately makes his move. He transforms into his giant form, and he blocks the hole in the wall, but he's surprised that the beasts are running away, thinking someone must be controlling them. He uses his new function to create a concrete slab, which is meant to fix a vending machine in place, but he spams the skill to stack the slabs, until they completely cover the opening in the wall. He returns to his original form, and Director Bear tells the Earth mages to make their move, but he sees a group of monsters chasing them, so he attacks them with his claws. Boxo realizes that he's a formidable fighter, and the Earth mages start fixing the wall, and the band of bears knock the monsters out with their roaring blessing. Llamas helps the mages repair the wall, while Shim and Yumi work with Miguel to wipe out the monsters, and Boxo realizes that everything's going according to plan. But he sees that the monsters are organized once again, so he looks for the person who's controlling them. He sees a mage wearing a black robe, and thinks he looks suspicious, so Boxo flies towards him, as he considers crushing him to death. But he thinks he shouldn't kill him, because he still needs to interrogate him, and he returns to his usual form. He crashes near the man, who starts to panic, but Boxo wonders why he's working for the Netherlord. The man can't escape because of Boxo's barrier, so he orders his minions to destroy it, but Boxo notes that it can withstand their attacks, because he still has plenty of points. He tells the man to be quiet, and he starts to strangle him, telling him to order the monsters to stop. But he refuses to cooperate, so Boxo combines his cola with Mentos, and forces the man to drink the cola bomb. He knows that he's being cruel, but he notes that people's lives are on the line, so he needs to do whatever it takes to stop the man. He prepares to give him another cola bomb, but he freaks out because he thinks it's poison, and he stops controlling the monsters. They suddenly walk away, and everyone wonders what's happening, so Boxo calls all of them. Llamas rushes to his side, but she sees the man, and she recognizes him as the person who destroyed her old village. Everyone realizes that he's using a ring to control the monsters, but she suddenly starts pounding the barrier, and Boxo panics as he loses points. She tells him to drop the barrier, because she wants to punish the man for attacking her village. But everyone stops her, and Director Bear tells her to control her anger so that she can save as many people as possible. She apologizes for losing her composure and notes that she'll help repair the wall while Boxo removes his barrier. The director starts interrogating the man and threatens to make him suffer if he doesn't confess, so he freaks out once again. Director Bear tells Boxo to stay with Llamas while he does the dirty work, so Boxo watches her as she repairs the wall. He doesn't know what he should say to her, and she apologizes for wanting to avenge everyone in her village, revealing that it's the reason why she became a hunter, so she lost it when she saw the man. She starts crying, as Boxo notes that he wants to stay by her side no matter what happens, so that he can make her happy whenever she's sad. He tells her he'll be with her until the end, and he isn't sure if he understands what he means, because he wants to stay with her until she quits being a hunter. But she's flustered since she thinks he proposed to her, and she explains that her mother got married when she turned 18. So she believes it's too soon for her, and tells him she wants to get to know him before she marries him, but she thinks about their future, telling him she wants to see him turn into a human. But he wonders if romance between a human and a vending machine is even possible, and he turns red, as she thanks him for cheering her up. So he realizes that she was just messing with him, but he's glad that he was able to make her feel better. After that, the hunters defeat the monsters in the village, and they repair the walls, so the villagers are safe once again. Shirley looks for Director Bear, because she wants to know what to do with the depression in the ground, and Hilami knows that she's talking about the spot where Boxo dropped. Boxo knows that it's interfering with the reconstruction effort, but he realizes that it has a rectangular shape, so he comes up with an idea. We see everyone suffering because of the heat, and they beg Boxo to give them something cold, but he flies away and leads them to a pool. They see kids swimming in the pool, and Llamas thinks it looks fun, so she dives in with Hilami. She notes that it's nice and cold, and tells Sayori to join them, but she explains that she isn't interested, so Llamas pulls her into the water. Boxo is glad that everyone's having fun, and we learn that he filled the hole with ice cubes, so that it will turn into a temporary swimming pool. The villagers hold a summer festival, and everyone uses it as a chance to unwind, but Director Bear notes that they can't go crazy because they're still lacking in resources. The four bears ask Boxo to give them ice cream, but he notes that they're in a summer festival, so he transforms into a shaved ice machine. They have no idea what he's serving, but they decide to try it anyway, and they all think it's amazing. But he wishes he had more than 3 kinds of syrup, so he decides to take the fruits he's selling, and he adds them as toppings. Everyone enjoys eating it, and Llamas notes that Boxo is an all-purpose magic item, but he just tells her to call him a vending machine. After that, Boxo spends time with Llamas, who notes that the man who destroyed her village has already been punished, so she thinks she no longer has a purpose as a hunter. But Boxo tells her to just have fun with him, and we learn that he enjoyed every moment he spent with her, so he wants to stay by her side. She recalls that he wants to stay with her until the end, and she decides to go with his suggestion, telling him they still have plenty of things to do. They return to the Hunters Association, where Director Bear reveals that Hilami has repaired the transfer circle, but she notes that it isn't fully operational yet, so they can only send 3 people at once. Director Bear notes that they'll send people to the Origin Stratum, and Shim notes that it's the only stratum that leads out of the dungeon, so securing it will make evacuating residents easier. Director Bear notes that Hilami will be one of the 3 people they'll send, and she'll be going with Llamas and Boxo. They accept the mission, but Miguel decides to join them, and Boxo is glad to have him in the team. But he reveals that they're the only ones he talks to, so he doesn't know what he'll do without them. The director tells them to be careful, and they head to the Origin Stratum, where they see a bunch of footprints, so Hilami thinks the people turned back because they couldn't use the transfer circle. We see Kelroy leading the villagers, as they struggle to defend themselves against the monsters, but Miguel suddenly appears, and obliterates the beasts with his sword skill. Kelroy realizes that reinforcements have arrived, and he's glad to see Boxo, because the people haven't eaten for days. They buy the food and drinks he's selling, and he struggles to give them what they want, but he manages to satisfy them, and Kelroy tells him he just saved their lives. He mentions the stairs to the surface, and he's surprised that Boxo can talk to him, but Hilami interrupts them, asking Kelroy why he didn't use the stairs to get the people out of the dungeon. So he reveals that he had no choice but to dig in and fight their enemies, because the door to the surface won't open. But Sui suddenly joins them, and she begs for food. Everyone starts eating together, and the members of Kelroy's group are glad that Boxo showed up because they were running out of supplies. Sui gobbles up her food, and the other kids tell her to slow down, but she can't help it. Kelroy notes that they can evacuate everyone after Hulami fixes the transfer circle, but Director Origin suddenly appears, and she thanks Boxo for saving everyone. She tells the villagers they need to leave the stratum and take refuge in the Clearflow Lake village. But they need to hold out until Hulami fixes their transfer circle, and they start cheering for Origin as Boxo realizes that she's popular with the men. The next day, Llamas and Boxo join a search party, and they head to a nearby prison where they look for people who have taken refuge. Origin tells them that the criminals in the prison are hopeless scum, but she asks her assistant about one of them, so she reveals that he's still in prison because he won't change his behavior. Llamas wonders what kind of person he is, so Origin mentions that he's a pervert and they had to throw him into prison because the people complained about him. Everyone realizes that the cells are empty, but they see a strange man named Heavy, and Origin recognizes him as the pervert they were talking about. But he explains that he simply lives true to his instincts, and he tells them not to worry because he just likes well-worn footwear, and he has no interest in the person who wore them. Origin wonders how he got his collection while he's in prison, so he reveals that he released the other prisoners because the monsters were causing trouble. She reminds him that they're dangerous people, but he reveals that he used his magic to attract the monsters to them after he released them because he thinks the world is a better place without them. Origin thinks he's lying, but Sui knows that he's telling the truth, and he calls her his friend, but she notes that it isn't the case. She mentions that he's also a member of Kelroy's group, revealing that he uses healing and mind-altering magic, and he tells everyone why he loves used footwear, but they all think he really is a pervert. He reveals that he doesn't like brand new shoes because they don't tell a story with their smell and appearance, but ones that are worn by hunters are ripe for the harvest. Llamas tells him he shouldn't steal other people's shoes, but he notes that theft is one of the worst acts a person can commit, and he can't bring himself to do it. So he pesters the owners into selling the footwear he likes, and he buys it for a fair price. Sui notes that he gives their group a bad reputation, and Origin wonders why he didn't fight the monsters, so he reveals that he didn't want to get involved. But he mentions that he didn't just let everyone die, and he deactivates his spell, revealing that he used his magic to save the innocent people. They realize that they're safe now, and Origin can't believe he's actually a good person, telling him she has misjudged him. She apologizes for the way she treated him, and offers to reward him, so he tells her to give him her boots. They bring the survivors back to the village, and they're happy to be reunited with their loved ones, but Origin gives Heavy her boots, and he notes that he can already feel its history. But Filmina suddenly knocks him out, and she notes that he's sick in the head. Kelroy returns Origin's boots, and tells her she can't let Heavy have it, as he whispers something to her, which causes her to freak out and run away. Boxo knows that Heavy is a weirdo, but he's a capable healer, so Boxo thinks they need his help. Heavy approaches him, and he buys a warm tea, but he pours it in one of his boots. He reveals that the boot was worn by a lady hunter for 12 years, so he enjoys the sweat and experience in it. He notes that he can only enjoy its scent for a week, and he starts drinking his tea, as he tells Boxo to take it easy, because he appears to be tense. Heavy mentions that they only live once, so they should do whatever they want with their lives, telling Boxo they have the same spirit as enthusiasts, but he notes that it's not true. After that, Boxo decides to check his abilities, and we learn that vending machines are divided into two categories. The first are the machines that sell items, while the machines in the second category offer automated services, like changing money and dispensing pachinko balls. Boxo realizes that he has reached rank 3, and he knows that he still has room to improve, but he needs 3 million points to rank up. He suddenly sees the 4 bears rushing towards him, and they tell him to give them their favorite fried chicken, but he finds them annoying, so he wants them to calm down. We learn that Hulami has fixed the transfer circle, so the residents start evacuating to the lake village. But Boxo wants to know more about the stratums in the dungeon, so he asks Origin about them. She reveals that there are 7 areas, which are each ruled by different directors, but there's an area that they still haven't conquered, which is known as the Everlasting Zone. So Boxo realizes that 8 areas have been discovered so far, but she tells the kids it's time to evacuate, and he gives them balloons to make them happy as they leave. Origin wonders what they should do after they evacuate the residents, because the monsters might use the transfer circle if they abandon it. So Hulumi suggests taking down the person who's controlling the monsters, but Origin explains that she doesn't have enough manpower to do that. Kelroy tells her she can lead it to the Misfits, but she needs to pay them for their services, and she agrees to hire them. We see the Misfits fighting the monsters, while Hidi buys a drink, but Boxo asks him why he isn't fighting. So he explains that he's just a healer and he just stands by during combat because he has no offensive magic. They reach a fork in the road, and we learn that one of them leads to a lake, while the other one leads deeper into the dungeon. Kelroy mentions that he wants to see the lake first, but they see a group of monsters, and Hidi prepares to take them on. But Boxo wonders why they aren't attacking him, so his teammates explain that he's using his illusion magic to blind them. He mentions that he isn't interested in them, since they don't have any shoes, and we learn that he also has the blessing of might, but he isn't as strong as Lammas. He easily takes down the monsters, and Boxo is surprised at how merciless he is, but Kelroy notes that they should leave everything to him. They decide to split into two groups so that they can explore both paths, and Hidi decides to go with the lake group. But Boxo is worried that Hidi might cause trouble, so he tells Lammas they should go with him. They wipe out the monsters in their path, and they reach the lake, but Hidi tells everyone to have fun in the water. Boxo finds him sus, and Lammas explains that they need to hurry back, because the others are waiting for them. But Hidi mentions that they still have time to spare, and one of the bears dives into the water, so the others decide to take a bath. Hidi promises to stand guard while everyone has fun, but Boxo thinks he's up to something, so he transforms into a power washer. Hidi stares at their shoes, and he wonders what they smell like, but Boxo blows him away, as he notes that he saw it coming. After that, they return to Kelroy, who wonders why Hidi is the only one that's wet, so he explains that he fell into the lake. Filmina tells Boxo it's time to have lunch, so he transforms into a family market, which sells convenience store items, thinking it's the ideal lineup to satisfy everyone's cravings. Everyone's excited as they browse his selection, because there are plenty of foods they haven't seen before, so they want to give everything a try. He shows them how to open a rice ball, and they're amazed because they haven't seen anything like it, but we see Miguel fighting the monsters, and he tells them he needs to take a break. They reach the deepest part of the origin stratum, and Miguel mentions that he can sense over 100 creatures ahead of them. But Kelroy thinks it won't be a problem, and he notes that he and Miguel will take the lead. Boxo wants to help them, so he transforms into a pachinko ball dispenser and fills the road with his balls. Miguel asks him about the balls, so he explains that they will cause the monsters to trip and fall, and the bears mention that they can hear monsters ahead. Miguel uses his sword skill to obliterate them, and Lammas punches them away, while Boxo covers her back by launching cola bombs. But the monsters keep coming, and he thinks the only way to defeat them is to take out their commander, so he tells Lammas to throw him towards their enemies. But she refuses to do it, because she doesn't want him to get hurt. She mentions that they should work together since they're partners, and he looks forward to hearing her plan, but she tells him they'll launch a suicide attack. She rushes forward, and Miguel clears a path for them, so she thanks him for his help, calling him Boxo's #1 apprentice. She takes out the enemies in her path, while Boxo combines his pachinko balls with a special fluid and launches them towards the monsters. They explode in midair, and the enemies trip and fall, so they're knocked out, but he wonders why he still can't find their commander. One of the bears mentions that he heard a human scream, and he points to a pile of monsters, so Boxo transforms into a power washer and clears a path for Lammas. She punches the monsters away, and they see the girl who's controlling them, so Lammas takes her ring and crushes it with her fist. Kelroy mentions that it's time to go back, because they have completed their mission, and he notes that they should interrogate the girl when they get back. But Filmina tells him to stop touching the girl, and Boxo wonders what kind of relationship they have. Shiro and Aka mention that they're at it again, but they think it's embarrassing, because they should be old enough to know better. Lammas thinks Filmina is young, but Sui reveals that she's older than Kelroy, and she just looks younger because she's part vampire. Hidi explains that vampires feed on humans' blood, but they can also use other bodily fluids for nourishment, and it's possible for them to have children with humans. Lammas thinks it sounds lovely, so Shiro and Aka tell her that humans shouldn't have children with monsters. But she explains that she doesn't mind, and thinks Filmina is just like everyone else, because the Misfits have already accepted her. As they make their way back, Lammas asks everyone about the wishes they want granted, and Sui mentions that she wants money, so that the children in the orphanage can eat every day. Llamas mentions that she wants to turn Boxo into a human, and Hidi notes that his wish is to collect enough used shoes from all over the world so that he can use them to build a castle. Shiro and Aka reveal that they want to be popular with the ladies, but Sui notes that they're both losers, and everyone wonders what kind of wish Kelroy and Filmina have. They return to the village, where Boxo gives everyone food, but he suddenly transforms into a rice dispenser and plans to use his telekinesis to cook. But he realizes that he can't do it alone, so he tells Llamas and Hilami to help him out, and he transforms into a gas range. They cook the rice he gave them, and everyone eats it, realizing it tastes delicious. Boxo is happy that everyone's enjoying the food, and Llamas thanks him for everything he has done for them, so he looks forward to cooking for her again. Hilami reveals that she has adjusted the transfer circle, so it can only take them back to the Clearflow Lake, and she notes that the monsters won't be able to use it. Kelroy mentions that they should return once things settle down, and Sui wonders why she's paired up with Hidi, but Kelroy just tells her to bear with it. Hidi promises to protect her, but she freaks out as he touches her, so Kelroy tells her to calm down, but she explains that she can't stand his disgusting habits. She starts shooting arrows at him, but he easily dodges all of them, and Kelroy invites Boxo to the base of the Misfits, telling him it's in the Origin Stratum. He mentions that he wants to discuss something important with Boxo and his friends, and he realizes that the mood has shifted for the Misfits, but Sui and Hidi are still at it. Kelroy tells them to stop messing around, but Sui is determined to land a hit, and Kelroy tells Boxo to wait for them to calm down so that they can go to the base together. After that, Hilami notes that she wasn't expecting the Misfits base to be in the Origin Stratum, and Sui mentions that they didn't want it to stand out. Llamas wonders how long she's been with the group, so she reveals that it's only been less than 2 years, and Hidi mentions that he's her senior. But he explains that they don't bother with seniority, revealing that he doesn't even respect Shiro and Aka as his seniors. He notes that they're the first members of the Misfits, along with Kelroy and Filmina, and Sui reveals that she didn't know that, wondering why the 4 of them often disappear all at once. Miguel mentions that he noticed something about Shiro and Aka, but he decides not to tell Boxo about it, because he thinks he might just be imagining things. They see a strange building, and think it must be the Misfits base, but Sui shows them a secret passage, revealing that it's the entrance to their hideout. They meet Kelroy and the others, and he reveals that he gathered everyone there to tell them about his goal, asking them if they know they can have their wish granted by clearing the dungeon. Hidi thinks it's just a legend, but Kelroy reveals that a team was able to clear another dungeon, and their wishes were actually granted. But the dungeon disappeared after it was cleared, and Llamas wonders what happened to the people inside it, so he reveals that they were ejected, saying nobody died when the dungeon was destroyed. He decides to tell everyone about his secret, and he leads them to a strange room, where they see a boy sleeping in a crystal. Miguel realizes that he's still alive, and Kelroy notes that the boy is his son, revealing that he's been married to Filmina for almost 20 years. He adds that Shiro and Aka are also their children, and everyone's surprised hearing this, but Miguel notes that he already suspected it, because Shiro and Aka had the same presence as their parents. Kelroy wonders why Hidi didn't lose his composure, so he reveals that he already sensed it, and Llamas asks Shiro and Aka if the boy is their younger brother, so Shiro reveals that they're triplets. Hilami knows that the boy is in a crystal coffin, which is a magic item that stops time for the person inside, which is why he isn't aging. Kelroy reveals that he has a negative blessing, which was given to him by an evil god, and Kelroy explains that they didn't want to watch him suffer. So they decided to let him rest in the coffin until they find a way to help him, and Filmina reveals that he received the blessing of decay. It's a useless blessing that causes his body to rot, and it even destroys anything he touches, so he can't live a normal life. She adds that he was also born with the blessing of hyper-recovery, which heals him as his body decays, but she knows that he feels pain while his body is rotting, so he suffers every day. Llamas wonders why he received a negative blessing, so Kelroy reveals that they once wiped out a group of hunters, but they used a cursed item to get revenge, and it gave his son the blessing of decay. He reveals that his wish is to get rid of it, and notes that his family will do anything to achieve their goal. But he explains that they're running out of time, because the crystal coffin will stop working after a year or 2, and he asks everyone to follow them as they join the Netherlord's side. Sui reminds him that the Netherlord tried to kill everyone, but Kelroy explains that he'll do anything to save his son, and Hilami asks him how he'll join the Netherlord. So he reveals that a commander in that stratum is willing to arrange it, and he explains that the Netherlord wants them to defeat the final boss so that he can rule the dungeon. Hulami notes that he'll betray Kelroy in the end, and he knows that it might happen, but he thinks they can't clear the dungeon on time unless they work with the Netherlord. Boxo and his friends don't agree, so they prepare to fight, as Hidi notes that he'll bring Kelroy back to his senses. Boxo is worried about Lammas because she doesn't have full control of her blessing, so he tells the girls to gather around him and he protects them with his barrier. Kelroy starts fighting Hidi as he praises his combat skills, and he manages to scratch his face. Shiro and Akka surround Miguel, who attacks with his sword, and Akka dodges it, but he notes that he would have died if it hit him. Sui fires her arrow at Filmina, who stops it with her water wall, and Boxo thinks about joining the fight, but he's worried that he might hit his allies. Kelroy reveals that his blade is poisoned, and he assures Hidi that it won't kill him, but he wonders why Hidi is completely fine, because he was able to scratch his face. So he reveals that he used his blessing to relieve the pain, explaining that his illusions aren't magic, because he's just using his sensory manipulation to change everyone's perception. Hulami knows that it's a rare blessing that allows the user to control everyone's senses, and he can use it to block pain. So Kelroy wonders if it can help his son, but Hidi explains that he can't use it to block other people's pain. Shiro and Akka struggle against Miguel, and they can't believe how powerful he is, but Kelroy tells them it's time to make their move. He uses his secret blessing, which causes Hidi to scream in pain, and Boxo wonders what just happened, but he thinks Kelroy can't escape because of his barrier. He uses his blessing again, and Boxo's barrier suddenly disappears, so he becomes confused, and Filmina blinds everyone with her mist as her family runs away. Miguel thinks about chasing after them, but Hulami tells him it's too dangerous because they know nothing about Kelroy's blessing. Hidi immediately recovers, so Sui wonders if he was just putting on an act, but he reveals that Kelroy blocked his blessing and he couldn't move because of the poison. So Hulami thinks that Kelroy's power allows him to negate other blessings, and they decide to return to the village to report the incident. Director Bear learns about what happened, so he puts Kelroy and the others on the wanted list, and Hidi thinks they left their son behind to leave a message. Boxo can't bring himself to be angry at them, because he knows that they're desperate to save their son, and Miguel wonders how they plan to reach the final stratum. So Hulami notes that the Netherlord might give them a magic item to move between areas, or they could simply use the transfer circle. But Hidi thinks they won't clear the dungeon anytime soon, because they aren't strong enough to defeat the final boss, so they'll need to recruit new members. Hulami recalls that the Misfits still have 2 remaining members, and Hidi thinks Kelroy will try to win them over, so Director Bear suggests contacting them immediately. But Hidi doesn't know where to find them, and Hulami notes that they can't freely travel between stratums, so they decide to return to the Clearflow Lake. They head to the transfer circle, and Hulami activates it, but she realizes that it has been tampered with. She tells everyone to get away, but they mention that they can't move, and Boxo suddenly finds himself in an empty room, so he thinks he must have been sent to another stratum. He wonders what happened to the others, and thinks about what he should do next, but Director Bear and Hulami suddenly appear, and he wonders why they aren't with Lammas. They realize that they're in the labyrinth stratum, and Hulami thinks it's because Kelroy messed with their transfer circle. She reveals that it doesn't have enough power to take them to the Clearflow Lake, explaining that they need a magic stone to fix it, and they decide to go to the Hunters Association. Director Bear carries Boxo to the association, where they realize that everyone's struggling because of the monster attacks, so Boxo gives them food for free. They talk to the director of the labyrinth, and tell her that the monsters were being controlled by the Netherlord. But she can't believe the info didn't reach her, thinking it must be because she's the worst director in the dungeon. After that, Director Bear reveals that he checked the item shops, and they're already out of magic stones, but he notes that they might find one in the labyrinth. He decides to go there with Boxo, but they hear a commotion, so Boxo transforms into his smaller form, while Director Bear runs to see what's happening. They see a girl named Kikoyu, who's surrounded by monsters, so Director Bear saves her, and Boxo returns to his original form. She's surprised that he can transform, but her companions suddenly get into position, so she tells everyone to cover their ears. The bird stuns the monsters with its sonic attack, while the rhino finishes them off, and Director Bear is amazed by how capable they are. So Kikoyu reveals that they're unique, because someone's power made them stronger, and Boxo wonders who she's talking about. She uses a ball of dirt to absorb the monster's remains, and Director Bear asks her about it, but she notes that she wants to get to know them before she answers his question. So he formally introduces himself, and notes that Boxo is a magic item with a person's soul inside, so he can carry on a conversation. She introduces them to her companions, and notes that the rhino's name is Botan, while the bird is called Kuroyata. Boxo wonders if she also has powers, so she reveals that she has the ability to control cold air, and she can even move while hiding her presence. But she knows that she isn't strong enough to defeat the monsters, so she's been relying on her companions to take them down. Boxo thinks she must be an animal handler, and she reveals that she isn't, saying her companions are smart enough to think on their own, but Director Bear asks her who she's talking to. So she explains that she was answering Boxo's questions, revealing that she can hear the inner voice of whoever she touches. She mentions that she wants to eat while they talk to each other, and Boxo prepares to show her his items, but she notes that she'll provide the food. She places a plant on the ball of dirt, and it suddenly starts growing, as she reveals that the piece of field absorbs monsters as nutrients, and makes seedlings grow rapidly. She takes the sweet potatoes and starts cooking them, but she notes that it will take a while, so she decides to tell them about the true story of a kind field. She mentions that an old woman once lived in a remote village, but a soul suddenly possessed her field, and we learn that it's a person from another world, but he couldn't talk to the woman. She cultivated him every day, until she finally passed away, and he was left all alone, but he was able to make animal friends. He saw a girl being chased by monsters, so he decided to save her, and he went on a journey to save even more people. He arrived at a fortified city, where he saw a fierce battle with the Demon Lord's forces, so he threw himself into battle and saved the city. He marched to the Demon Lord's stronghold, where he fought another battle, but he lost consciousness after he helped his friends retreat. Boxo thinks Kikoyu and her companions are the friends in the story, and she notes that they want to meet the field again, but they can't reach the Demon Lord's domain because a huge wall is blocking the path. She reveals that they went to the labyrinth because they heard a rumor that the Netherlord is in the dungeon, but Director Bear tells her about the situation. So she realizes that the Netherlord won't help her reach the Demon Lord's domain, and she gives Director Bear the food she cooked. So he eats it, and he tells her it's delicious, but she notes that Field's vegetables taste 10 times better. Boxo gives them drinks, and as she tastes it, she's amazed by how cold and delicious it is, but Director Bear tells her he can also provide food and other items. She realizes that he's just like Field, and he notes that he's also from another world, so she wants them to meet each other, thinking he must be from the same place as Field. Boxo starts traveling with her, and later that day, they realize it's getting dark, so they decide to set up camp. Boxo transforms into a family mart, and she's amazed by the sweets he's selling, so she decides to try all of them, and she notes that they're delicious, but she thinks Field's fruit would make them taste even better. Kikoyu falls asleep, and Director Bear asks Boxo what he thinks about her, so he mentions that she's a nice kid. But Director Bear notes that her mind and appearance don't match, and she even has abilities that humans don't possess. He thinks she must be a snow child, and Boxo doesn't know what that is, so Director Bear explains that they look like 6-year-olds until they reach adulthood, and they also have special powers. But there are people who hunt them down, and they're in danger of extinction, because they're rumored to turn into ice statues that never melt after their heads are cut off. The severed head will curse everyone in the region, and it's said to have destroyed entire nations, but Boxo thinks beheading someone just to cast a curse is a terrible thing to do. Director Bear notes that the headless ice statue has the power to remove curses, so he thinks it could save Kelroy's son. But Boxo knows that Kelroy might kill Kikoyu if he finds out, and Director Bear tells him to keep it a secret. The next day, Director Bear defeats a monster, and it drops a magic stone, but he isn't sure if it has enough power to fix the transfer circle. They decide to head back, but Kikoyu can't pass through a wall because she's holding onto the piece of field. She mentions that she doesn't want to leave it behind, so Hulumi comes up with an idea, and Boxo makes a barrier around her, allowing her to get through the wall. Everyone's glad that the plan worked, and Hulumi reveals that she has finished adjusting the transfer circle, so she can join them when they return to the labyrinth. The next day, they enter the labyrinth again, and they decide to defeat the lava fiend to get its magic stone. We learn that it's more dangerous than a Stratum Lord, but they think they can defeat it if they work together, and Kikoyu orders Kuroyata to look for it. After that, Hulami wonders who's in charge of dinner, and Kikoyu notes that she'll do it, but Boxo mentions that he has sweets, which makes Hulami excited, because she likes sugary foods. He transforms into a family mart, and everyone decides to go with his food, but Kikoyu thinks it's unfair. The next day, we see that Boxo was able to sleep, because Kikoyu volunteered to keep watch. But as he wakes up, he sees that she has already prepared breakfast for everyone, so he realizes that it was all a part of her plan. Everyone eats it, and they all think it's delicious, but Kuroyata suddenly returns, and she notes that it has found the lava fiend. Hulami mentions that she knows how to defeat it, and Boxo flies with Kuroyata as he observes the lava fiend. We see that he has surrounded it with his walls, and he attacks it with ice water, thinking it should get weaker because of the temperature. Botan suddenly charges in, and it uses its horn to attack the lava fiend's weak point, causing it to collapse. But it suddenly regenerates, so Boxo realizes they're in trouble, but the sky suddenly shatters, and a massive block of ice crushes the lava fiend. He realizes that it's a stratum split, and everyone sees Llamas approaching, as she notes that she's glad to see Boxo again. But he mentions that he's angry, because her actions were reckless, and Director Bear asks her what happened. So she reveals that she was transferred to the Clearflow Lake with Director Origin, and she knows that causing an impact on a stratum split might cause it to split again. So she decided to give it a try, and punched the frozen pond with all her power, before using Hulami's magic item to safely fall from the sky. Director Bear is just glad she's safe, and explains they were just concerned, so she apologizes for being reckless, but Hulami is happy that they're finally back together. After that, Hulami notes that she has fixed the transfer circle, and Director Bear uses it to return to the Clearflow Lake. She tells Kikoyu to go next, so she leaves with her companions, and Boxo prepares to transfer with Hulami and Llamas. But a red light suddenly appears, and Hulami wonders what's wrong, because the transfer circle is in perfect condition. Boxo realizes they're about to get separated again, so he uses his barrier to keep them together, and they're transferred to the dark forest stratum. Boxo is glad his idea worked, but Hulami wonders why the transfer circle malfunctioned, because their friends were able to use it without any issues. Llamas notes that the red light came from Boxo, so Hulami checks him out, and she sees that there's a malfunction spell on him. He realizes that Kelroy placed it there before he escaped, and Hulami removes it, but we learn that it will take days for the transfer circle to recharge. Hulami reveals that they're on the 7th stratum, which is a dangerous place filled with plant monsters, and they see a strange tree, as Llamas mentions that it looks like a person. Hulami notes that there are monsters in that stratum that turn people into trees, and they suddenly hear a commotion, so they run to the gate, where they see Sui and Hidi fighting against carrot monsters. Llamas joins the fight, destroying the monsters with her fists, and Hidi is glad that she's there to help them. But Sui tells Boxo she's been waiting for him, because she's extremely hungry, so he transforms into a snack vending machine. She eats the food with her companions, who are all happy to have meat again, and Hidi explains that the people in that stratum eat mostly vegetables, because there are no animals to hunt for meat. Llamas wonders why the houses weren't destroyed by the monsters, so Hidi explains that they don't harm vegetation, and since the trees were used to build houses, the monsters will never touch them. Hulami wonders if the trees they saw were people, so he reveals that they were villagers who inhaled the stratum lord's pollen during a monster attack. But she's surprised that there are still survivors, because the stratum lord attacked them, so she wonders if they were able to defeat it. He reveals that they just used fire to drive it away, but explains that they would never use it against the monsters, because it could burn the entire village. He mentions that the trees on that stratum are highly flammable, which is why everyone's banned from using fire, and he notes that the villagers will return to normal if they defeat the stratum lord. Llamas wonders where they can find it, so he points her to a giant tree. He reveals that the trees get out of the way when it moves, so Boxo realizes that it can control them, but Hidi mentions that they need to rest for now, because Sui is so stuffed that she can't move. After that, we see Llamas on a tower with Boxo, and she tells him she can do anything when he's with her, but he just thanks her, and she notes that it's a weird thing to say. She suddenly gets closer, so he thinks she's about to kiss him, but she just smashes the monster behind him, and reminds him that they're on watch. The next day, Sui reveals that they've been eating the vegetable monsters attacking the village, and she notes that they're tasty. But watermelon monsters suddenly appear, so she shoots them down, explaining that she doesn't have to worry about running out of arrows, because there's plenty of wood around them. A man comes to give her more arrows, and he knows that Lammas has the blessing of might, but he thinks she's wasting it since she only fights with her fists, so he tells her to visit his weapons shop. She decides to go there with Boxo and Hilami, and they start looking around, realizing there are high-quality weapons in the shop. Lammas sees a cloth, and the merchant tells her it's water repellent and flashy, but it isn't for sale. She decides to wear it anyway, and Boxo realizes that it looks good on her, so he wants to convince the merchant to sell it to them. He shows them magic items, which get heavier when they're picked up, and Hilami recognizes them as measuring stones. Lammas takes one of them, and she mentions that it's light, but when she gives it to Hilami, she struggles to lift it. The merchant tells Lammas to try lifting the heaviest one, and she notes that it's just as heavy as Boxo, so the merchant realizes that her strength is insane, and promises to make the ultimate weapon for her. After that, Boxo asks his friends about the director of the stratum, so Hidi and Sui mention that he isn't so bad, but Boxo wonders why they're acting strange. He decides to visit the director with Lammas and Hilami, and he introduces himself as Director Dark, revealing that he's a darkness fiend. But he doesn't stop talking, and he keeps cracking dad jokes, so they realize that he's a weirdo. He wants to try Boxo's drinks, so he gives him sweet tea, and Dark starts talking about how delicious it is, but Boxo wonders what he can do to stop him. He transforms into a TV vending machine, and he plays a video of two comedians performing on stage, which gets Dark to be quiet. After that, Boxo's group heads to the forest with Dark, and they encounter a group of monsters, but they easily take them out. Dark tells Lammas to remove the trees, so she lifts them and throws them into the village, and she continues to do it for days, so that she can make a path through the forest. But Hilami isn't satisfied with their progress, because it will take ages before they reach the Stratum Lord, and she thinks it might be faster if they just look for the commander. Director Bear suddenly arrives with the others, and Hilami wonders how they got there, because she thought the transfer circle was still recharging its magic power. So Shim reveals that he used his magic to activate it, and Hilami is impressed, because she knows that it takes skill to pull it off. Director Bear notes that they need to see Dark, and his companions try to come up with excuses, because they all want to avoid him. But Director Bear tells them to come with him, because he doesn't want to deal with Dark alone. They make their way to the village, and Director Bear tells Kikoyu to carry out their plan, so she tells Boxo she needs his help. They gather all the villagers as Boxo prepares lunch for them, and Kikoyu gives them their food, as Boxo realizes that she's touching them to read their thoughts. She finds the person she's looking for, and she signals him to record the girl's face, so he realizes that she's the Netherlord's commander. They show the recording to Dark, who can't believe the girl works for the Netherlord, and Director Bear mentions that they need to learn more about her. Boxo thinks Hidi can get information from her, so Director Bear tells him to question her, and Dark mentions that he'll arrest her himself. After that, Dark releases the girl in the dungeon, and Hidi uses his sensory manipulation to make her believe he's the Netherlord. She wakes up and sees the Netherlord standing before her, and Hidi asks her about the moment they started working together. So she reveals that the Netherlord appeared before her 2 months ago, and he promised to give her enough money to pay off her gambling debt if she followed him. She reveals that he ordered her to defend the village as a hunter, while using his ring to control the monsters, but Hidi asks her if that's all she can remember. So she mentions that she met the Misfits 2 weeks ago, and they seemed to be looking for someone, but they left when they couldn't find him. Boxo thinks they were looking for their other members, but Hidi suddenly thinks about removing her boots so that he can smell them. Dark kicks him away, and the girl realizes that she was just hallucinating, and Dark mentions that he trusted her, revealing that he gave her money because he thought she would stop gambling. The group continues to make their way to the Stratum Lord, clearing the trees and taking out the monsters, while Kikoyu absorbs their remains with her piece of field. Dark notes that the Elder Tree was originally peaceful, but that changed after the Netherlord appeared. Director Bear notes that they need to defeat it to save the people who were turned into trees, and we learn that their plan is to pour anti-plant poison into it while it's being distracted. It starts to get cold at night, but Lammas is fine thanks to the cloak that Boxo got for her. Sui begs him for food, so he thinks about giving them cup ramen to warm them up, but he decides to show them something new. Sui is impressed by his udon noodles, so everyone also wants to try it, but he transforms once again into a burger machine, and they all find it delicious. Boxo thinks about how he used to be a vending machine enthusiast, traveling around just to try different machines, while his friends would tell him he's wasting his money, but he's happy that it turned out to be useful. They continue to clear the trees during the day, and Kikoyu takes turns cooking with Boxo at night, but she only has fruits and vegetables, since they can't use fire. Dark remembers how an elder tree was defeated decades ago using fire, but it ended up spreading and destroying everything in the stratum, which is why it was banned. Boxo wonders if there's anything he can do to help everyone with the cold, and he remembers that he has a hot spring function, so everyone works together gathering wood, and they're able to make an open bath. Boxo fills it with hot water, and everyone looks forward to taking a bath. Hivi offers to keep watch for monsters, but they know that he's just after their shoes, so Kikoyu tells him her companions will stand guard. Hulami is excited, but she wonders what Boxo is doing there. Llamas mentions that they need his soap and towels, but Hulami reminds her that he has the soul of a man. Llamas doesn't seem to mind, but Boxo gets her to take him outside. Everyone relaxes in the bath, but Kuroyata suddenly warns them about something, and they see that the sky is turning red. They realize that the elder tree is on fire, so they think it was defeated, and the director orders the bears to go back to the village and evacuate all the people who should have recovered from being turned into trees. Llamas wonders what they should do next, so the director notes that they need to confirm if the elder tree was really defeated. He also orders them to remove all the trees around the area to stop the fire from spreading, but Boxo wonders if it will be enough. Shim creates a huge whirlwind, and Yumi quickly cuts through the trees, while Kikoyu absorbs the wood. Hulami suddenly asks Boxo if he can dispense oil, but he thinks it's a terrible idea in their situation, so she tells him she has a plan. He decides to trust her, turning into a fuel pump, and he starts spraying the fire. Director Bear wonders what he's doing, so Hulami explains that the forest trees burn up quickly, and they can get rid of them to stop the fire from getting any closer, but she notes that it's a gamble. The fire suddenly becomes more intense, but Boxo protects everyone with his barrier, and his points rapidly decrease, but he manages to hold out until all the trees are burned up. Everyone thanks him for saving them, and they promise to pay him back to replenish his points. They make it to the elder tree, and Kikoyu hears no voice from it, so she thinks it must be dead. Hulami tells Llamas to punch it with her full power just in case, so she smashes it and causes it to split. They all prepare to head back, but a girl suddenly appears, and Director Bear wonders who she is. She can't believe they don't know her, so she introduces herself as the songstress Kao, revealing that she works for the Netherlord. Director Bear thinks she's some kind of undead, and she thinks they won't be able to hit her, but Sui's arrow lands on her, since it's imbued with magic. Shim zaps her with a blast of lightning, so she gets pissed off and tries to counterattack, but Yumi cuts through her chain, and she gets taken away by Kuroyata. Dark is depressed seeing that the forest was destroyed, but Director Bear assures him that the Clearflow Lake will take in all his residents. Yumi is glad that they all made it, and Sui thinks everything will work out, so they can't give up. They make it back to the Clearflow Lake, and we see all the forest residents happy to see Dark. Director Bear tells them all to get some rest, but Boxo wants to keep helping out. We see him in his usual spot, but he sees everyone crowding around Kikoyu selling her vegetables. He realizes that she's stealing his customers, so he transforms into a new sweets machine to get them back, but she fights back the next day selling baked potatoes, and he recognizes her as his rival. Munami comes up to Boxo as she mentions a Goddess Grand Prix event, explaining that since they have more refugees in the village, she wants to hold a festival so they can get to know each other better. Boxo thinks it's a good idea, and Munami offers to pay him 2 gold coins if he can reward the winner with 50 of their favorite item from him. He thinks it's a good deal, so he accepts, and Munami tells Llamas and Hilami that they also need to participate. They try to refuse, so she offers them a week of free food, and tells them to show Boxo what they can do. She mentions that if Shirley wins, she might be overcome with emotion and kiss Boxo, so Llamas changes her mind and decides to participate. Hulami also decides to join, which surprises them, so she mentions that she's been developing an attraction magic item, so she's only entering for research purposes. Boxo prints out flyers for the event, and the people are excited to have a break from the fighting. Shirley tells Boxo she'll be competing, and he thinks she'll be tough to beat, so he wonders if there's any way he can help Hulami and Llamas. We see the girls having a meeting to see how they can win the event. We learn they will get a chance to introduce themselves, and then show off a special skill to appeal to the crowd, but they all wonder what to wear since they don't have any different outfits. Sui and Llamas think about showing off more skin, but Hulami thinks it won't be enough against Shirley since she's known for her figure. Sui reveals that she knows how to sew, but she's only made children's clothes, so she isn't confident with making anything fancy. Boxo suddenly transforms into a magazine dispenser, and he's able to give them ideas for outfits from his old world, which gets them excited. The day for the event arrives, and Sui manages to finish all the outfits, and they promise to give her the reward if either of them win. As they head inside, Boxo suddenly realizes that he can't see the stage from where he is, and even his balloon combo would get blown in the wrong direction, but the director suddenly appears and offers to move him. We see him in the front row, but he's next to Dark, who won't stop talking, and Director Bear tells them to pay attention since they're judges. He reveals the Boxo will also be a judge, since Origin couldn't make it, but he isn't sure about the responsibility. Munami begins the event and she starts introducing the girls, as we see that Origin couldn't be a judge because she joined the event. We learn that Dark baited her into it, but she mentions she's doing it to liven up the festival, and all her Stratum residents cheer for her. When Llamas is introduced, she gets a lot of applause, and Boxo can't believe how popular she is, but when it's Shirley's turn, the applause is on another level, and she seems to be the favorite to win. Everyone goes to get changed for their special skill demonstrations, but Llamas and Hulami come out to Boxo, and they ask to borrow him for a moment. They think they don't stand a chance against Shirley, and they wonder if he has any items that can make them more appealing. He thinks it's possible, but they don't have enough time to help all three of them, so Sui volunteers to miss out, since she will get the prize anyway if they win. Boxo suddenly turns into a cosmetic vending machine, and using his telekinesis, he applies makeup onto them, giving them a complete transformation. The next stage of the competition begins, as each of the girls show off their special talents. We see Origin as she beats up a dummy that looks like Dark, and Kyoka puts on a show with her companions. Sui is up next, and Boxo is surprised to see her in a gym uniform. She shows off her archery skills, popping multiple balloons at once, and she gets a great reaction from the crowd. Llamas and Hulami act as a duo, and Boxo is impressed by how they both look. Hulami shows off her new magic item, which connects Llamas to a puppet that mimics all of her movements, but when she goes to pick up the trolley, it isn't as strong as her and ends up getting crushed, but everyone seems to enjoy their act. Munami prepares to call out Shirley, but she suddenly gets a note, and reveals that Shirley has fallen ill and had to withdraw from the competition, which shocks everyone. Everyone submits their votes, and Boxo wonders who will win, but Shirley appears next to him. He sees that she seems to look fine, so he realizes that she only agreed to join the competition to get people more excited. Boxo wonders what Hidi thought about the competition, but he only cares about their shoes, and thinks that Director Origin's boots deserve first place. After all the votes are counted, Munami announces the results, and Llamas is declared the winner. She receives the 50 Boxo meal tickets, and also a magic item from Sayori's company, but they're a pair of boots, and Hidi is completely shocked seeing them. He goes to meet Sayori after the show, recognizing the boots as the untiring god's feet. He wonders where she got them from, so she reveals that her father found them in the scorching sand stratum, and Hidi seems to get serious hearing this. The next day, everyone is knocked out after drinking all night, but Sui suddenly rushes in, asking Boxo if he's seen Hidi. We see that he left a letter, saying he has something he needs to take care of, but they all realize that he must be headed to the scorching sand stratum. Sui pretends she doesn't care about him, but they decide to go after him. When they get there, they struggle with how hot it is, so Boxo uses his refrigeration to help cool them off. They arrive at the Stratum's Hunter Association to deliver a letter from Director Bear, but Miguel suddenly appears, and he's overjoyed to see Boxo again. He reveals that when they were separated, he was sent here by himself, and he couldn't find a way back. Boxo wonders if he's improved his communication skills since he's been on his own, but he reveals that he's been so stressed for the last few days that his stomach has been a wreck. They meet with Director Scorch, who reveals they were also attacked by monsters, but they managed to fight them off and capture their commander. He reads the letter from Director Bear and learns about the situation, but he's surprised when he discovers that Boxo can provide them with water, because they were starting to run low on it, and Boxo ends up selling water for the whole day. Llamas wonders what they should do next, and they end up deciding to check out the shop that sold the magic boots. Llamas decides to buy one of the items, and the shopkeeper thinks it's her lucky day, since she's her third new customer, and Llamas wonders if the other two were Sui and Heavy. She also asks about the magic boots, but the shopkeeper notes that she can't reveal any confidential information. Llamas shows her an introduction letter from Director Scorch, as well as from Sayori's company, and Boxo is surprised that Sayori's name got a bigger reaction. The shopkeeper decides to make a special exception, and reveals that the boots came from a hunter named Tay. They meet up with Miguel, who tells them that Tay is the leader of a hunter team called the Billowing Flames, but they're away exploring a ruin at the moment, so they will need to cross the desert to find him. Miguel asks to join them, and Boxo finds it hard to say no to him, but they suddenly hear Sui and Heavy arguing, as she tells him he doesn't need to do everything alone, but he notes that it's something personal. He doesn't want to inconvenience everyone, but Sui cries as she thinks he's being just like Kelroy, wishing they could have talked things out with him. Llamas notes that he's just making them worried by not telling them anything, and he finally agrees to tell them everything. We learn that before Heidi joined the Misfits, he used to work with his childhood friend. They were an impressive duo, and after making some money, he decided to get his friend some new boots for her birthday, but they were attacked by bandits while on an escort mission, and he ended up getting knocked out. He found everyone else dead when he woke up, and his friend's body had her legs cut off. The bandits were masked, so he doesn't know what they look like, and the boots were his only clue, so it's why he started paying attention to everyone's shoes. Sui wishes he had told them about it sooner so they could have helped him, but he thinks it was his own problem. She mentions that things turned out the way they did because everyone kept secrets, and tells him he can just ask for help since they're Nakama. She finally gets through to him, so he thanks her, and he asks them all for their help. They talk about how they can make it through the desert, and Llamas wonders if the shop has any items that can help. Hulami suddenly appears, along with Kikoyu, and she reveals that she has a cloak that blocks heat and also has a cooling effect. She also gives Llamas new equipment from the forest stratum, which is able to change weight, so she'll be able to better control her body when she fights. They start to cross the desert the next day, and everyone is glad they have the cloaks, while Kikoyu is fine since she's an ice spirit, but everyone hugs onto Boxo to be extra cool. They take a break in a tent which Boxo fills with ice, and he sees Kikoyu with a book. He realizes it's a calendar and wonders about the date that she has circled, so she notes that it's a certain anniversary, and Boxo decides not to pry. The group sees the desert tower ruin in the distance, and we learn that the Stratum Lord is on the top floor. Kikoyu tells Kurayata to have a look, but he suddenly disappears. Everyone rushes forward, and Llamas goes through a barrier, where she finds the tower right in front of her, so they realize it's an illusion that makes the tower seem far away. Kurayata returns, and he tells Kikoyu that there were lookouts, but they were distracted, so it's their chance to get inside. Llamas pushes the door open, and they're shocked to see giant monsters inside, but they realize they're not moving. Llamas remembers Director Scorch saying the commander was captured, so they think the monsters must be waiting for orders. Hulami thinks they can't let their guard down, and she suddenly gets an idea. We see Miguel as he unleashes an attack, triggering all the monsters to become active, but they suddenly attack each other, and we learn that Heidi used his illusions to make them see each other as enemies. Llamas takes the chance to try out her new gloves, and they end up defeating all the monsters. Kikoyu uses field to absorb them all, and they take a quick break for some food. Hulami thinks they need to watch out for any traps as they move forward, so she asks Boxo to take the lead. Llamas heads up the stairs as Boxo protects her, and she triggers all of the traps. As the others catch up to her, they see footprints leading to a door, and they think the enemies must be inside, so Llama smashes her way through. They find the Billowing Flame Party, and they meet Tay, who wonders what they want. So Llamas introduces themselves as hunters from the Clearflow Lake, and Heidi mentions that they have business to discuss. Tay wonders how they found out about their plan to attack the village, so they realize he's working for the Netherlord. Llamas wonders why he would side with the demons, so he mentions that it's all for money. Heidi wonders if he has a habit of doing illegal things for money, so he admits that he's done all kinds of things, mentioning that he was even once a bandit. Heidi takes out the magic boots, asking him if he recognizes them, so he mentions how he stole them from a hunter that he attacked years ago. He notes that the girl refused to give them to him because they were precious to her, so he ended up cutting off her legs. Hiti realizes that he's the man he's been looking for, so he swears he will kill him no matter what. He charges forward, taking out the other members of the billowing flame, and seeing how strong he is, Tae begs him to spare his life. He offers to pay him any amount that he wants, but Hiti crushes him anyway. We see Tae crawling away, and he opens a door which reveals the Stratum Lord. He uses his ring to wake it up and commands it to kill everyone, but it suddenly prepares to eat him instead. Hiti smashes it in the face, as he notes that Tae is his prey. The boss isn't happy about this, so the others rush to help Hiti. Everyone attacks it with their strongest moves, but it's not enough and Miguel gets grabbed. Boxo uses his barrier to protect Lamas, but he loses over 2,000 points in one hit, which surprises him, since the crocodile boss only did 1,000 points of damage. Hiti thinks they need to retreat, but the ogre chases after them, so Boxo transforms and sprays gas everywhere to make it slip over. They manage to get out of the room, and Boxo lights the gas on fire, but the boss still follows them. Boxo wonders what he can do, and as they run past the monsters that they defeated, the boss starts eating them. Boxo realizes that it's just hungry, so he transforms into a sauce machine and starts putting barbecue sauce on everything. The boss is distracted by the new taste, so Boxo and the others manage to get away from it. Hiti heals Miguel outside, and they all wonder what they can do against such a monster. Hiti apologizes for losing his temper and getting them into more trouble, but Kikoyu tells him they just need to think about what to do next. Hiti suggests running away, but Sui mentions that Tae is still inside. Hiti notes that it's likely that the ogre will just eat him, because his ring wasn't strong enough to fully control it. Kulami notes that the ring only seems to be able to give simple commands, and it seems the Stratum Lord was too much for it. Lamas wonders what would happen if the ogre ate the ring, and they worry about it gaining the power to control the other monsters and attacking the village, so they think about how to defeat it. It seems to have two blessings since it has two heads, with the first being might since its attacks are so strong, and they think its second one is the blessing of hardening, which is why it was so tough. Kulami also knows that it loves food and drinking, so Boxo wonders if they can get it drunk. He transforms into another machine and shows off all the alcohol that he has, but they wonder how they can get it to drink. Lamas wonders if they would like a cute girl pouring drinks for them, but they don't know what an ogre would be into. Sui suggests using an illusion, and Hiti thinks it's possible, but he notes that he doesn't know their language, so Hulami mentions she can teach him the basics. We see Hiti disguised as a rock ogre with Boxo on his back, and they head back into the tower. The boss wonders who they are, so they put down the alcohol, and the twin ogre is immediately attracted by the smell. They start drinking it, and they find it delicious, so they end up drinking it all and falling asleep. Kulami realizes that its hardening blessing only works when it's awake, and Lamas feels bad about attacking it when it's asleep, but Miguel notes that it needs to be done. They prepare to take out the two heads, but Boxo tells Lamas to use him, since he will get points for defeating it, so she swings him to deliver the finishing blow. Boxo is shocked getting over 1,000,000 points, and after Kikoyu absorbs the boss's body, they receive the Lord's coin. Kulami thinks they should see what happened to Tae, but as they head back up the tower, it suddenly becomes cold. When they reach the top, Kikoyu gets a strange feeling, and they find Tae frozen in ice. She suddenly tells them all to gather around Boxo, and his barrier protects them from a blast of snow. Kulami wonders what's going on, and there's a girl that appears. Kikoyu recognizes her as a snow fairy, telling her that they aren't her enemies. She mentions that they came for Tae, but the girl suddenly shatters him. Kikoyu is shocked by this, since snow fairies don't usually kill people for no reason. The girl wonders what Kikoyu is doing together with humans, since they are responsible for hunting their kind, and Boxo remembers Director Bear telling him that if a snow child is beheaded on the day they become an adult, they will turn into an ice statue that never melts. Kikoyu notes that there are still some humans that can be trusted, but the girl thinks she must have been tricked. She also reveals that she's a general for the Netherlord, and she recognizes Boxo as the magic item that the Netherlord warned her about. She introduces herself as Solrum, and tells them about how the Netherlord saved her life, just when some humans were about to kill her. She attacks with another blast of snow, so Boxo quickly protects Kikoyu. They can't believe how strong she is, and Kikoyu thinks that her blizzard might last a long time, so Boxo notes that he only has enough points to last for one day. Kikoyu wants to try persuading her again, as she notes that they would be the same if she had met the Netherlord instead of Field. Boxo decides to believe in her, and she asks him for the time, so he notes that it's 1 minute to midnight. She heads out of the barrier, and we see that she has suddenly grown up, as the wind starts to blow in the opposite direction. The others are shocked realizing what's going on, and Hilami remembers hearing that snow fairies grow into adults the moment they turn 18, so Boxo realizes it was the date that Kikoyu had circled in her calendar. Hiti can't believe how strong she's become, and she even starts to push Solrum back. She gives her one more chance to back down, and Solrum notes that she can't afford to die yet, so she decides to back down and she disappears. The others feel bad for Hiti since he didn't get to deal with Tay, but he thinks that making him suffer wasn't going to be able to heal his heart. He seems to be able to accept what happened, and Sui mentions how she would have given him her boots to cheer him up, but she thinks that he should no longer care about them. He notes that his revenge is what started his obsession for footwear, but his love for them eventually became real, so he asks her to hand over her boots. He wonders what they might smell like, but she calls him a perv and they all end up having a snowball fight. We see Boxo as he sells ice cream to the villagers, and Sui thinks it's the perfect treat for a hot day, but she notes that the frozen fruit was also delicious. He wonders what she's talking about, so she points him to Kikoyu, and he realizes her business is doing well. His friends want to try her frozen fruits, but he considers her his business rival, so he doesn't want to lose to her. He upgrades his selection, and hires Lamas and Miguel to help him out, so the customers flock to him. He realizes he was able to steal Kikoyu's customers, but the next day, she hires the little bears to advertise her business, and he loses all of his customers. He calls for reinforcements, and thinks he can't lose with his friends on his team, but after 4 days, Boxo and Kikoyu treat their helpers to a restaurant. They order the most expensive food, and their bill ends up being more than both their profits, so they both end up losing. After that, everyone returns to the Clearflow Lake Stratum, but Boxo notices that Kikoyu is acting strangely, so he wonders what happened to her. As he sells his goods to the locals, he realizes he's been in the dungeon for about a year now, but he starts to feel lonely since he hasn't seen his friends for a few days. One evening, Lamas visits him, and she invites him to her tent, where everyone wishes him a happy birthday. She explains that they don't know when he was born, but it's been a year since she first met him, so they've decided to celebrate his birthday. He's happy that they gathered to have a party for him, and they realize that Kikoyu had her birthday days ago, so they decide to make it a joint party. The directors thank Boxo for everything he's done for them, and Bear gives him a certificate from the Hunters Association, while Hilami shows him a strap she invented. She explains that she improved the elasticity of its ropes, so it can now deal with his transformations, and he thinks it's extremely useful, since it allows him to change whenever he wants. Lamas shows him the cakes she made, and explains that she made them using the book he gave her, and he's happy to see birthday cakes in this world. She reveals that Kikoyu also has a cake, and the celebrants blow out the candles, as she wishes them a happy birthday. Boxo brings out his alcohol, but the party becomes chaotic as everyone gets drunk, and Lamas wonders if he's having fun. She notes that she wants to stay with him forever, and he tells her she's cute when she's drunk, but she doesn't hear him since she has already passed out. The next day, Kikoyu tells Boxo she wants to talk to him, and he thinks she wants to tell him what's on her mind, so he agrees to meet her at night. That evening, she tells him she's thinking about leading the dungeon, and she thinks she's selfish since they still haven't solved their problems. She notes that her magic power increased after she reached adulthood, so she can now hear the voice of the piece of Field, and she thinks she can revive Field if she takes it to his main body. Boxo telepathically asks her how she plans to leave the dungeon, so she explains that she'll channel a lot of magic power into a transfer circle, which will create a temporary path to the outside world. But she reveals that Hilami warned her not to do it, since it's extremely dangerous, and there's no guarantee that it will work. Boxo thinks she should listen to Hilami, but she explains that she wants to see Field again, and notes that she has enough magic to bring the other kids with her. She plans to leave with them soon, but she admits that when she sees everyone's faces, her courage starts to waver. Boxo thanks her for everything she's done for them, telling her to hold her head high, and she notes that she enjoyed every moment she spent with them. The next day, Boxo gives his friends the letters Kikoyu left for them, and they all hope she meets Field again. Hidi notes that the remaining stratums are the Dog Mountain and the Everlasting, but he wonders if they should bolster their forces first, since Kikoyu's departure left a massive gap to fill. He thinks about inviting a girl from the Misfits, since he knows she has the powers they need, but Sui thinks the person has some issues. They decide to look for her in the Dog Mountain stratum, and a man realizes they used the transfer circle to get there, so he tells them to wait while he talks to the director. His companion is glad that the transfer circle is working again, and he notes that monsters attacked them recently, but the Misfits took care of them. Everyone's surprised to learn about it, but the director suddenly greets them, so Hulumi gives him a letter from Director Bear. He realizes there's a problem, but he doesn't care and prepares to leave, so his companion stops him and promises to help them find the person they're looking for. As Hidi explains the situation to the director, Boxo invites Hulumi and Llamas to go fishing, and Llamas thinks about using her strength to catch fish, but Hulumi tells her they should use fishing rods instead. He sells fishing bait and thinks the girls will be shocked when they see how disgusting it is, but it doesn't bother them at all, since they're already used to seeing monsters. As they prepare to fish, Hulumi notes that whoever catches the biggest one wins the game, and they cast their rods. Hulumi catches a large fish, but Llamas feels a strong pull, and she realizes her rod is about to break, so she grabs the line. She catches a fish monster, and Boxo is about to catch something as well, but he struggles to pull it toward him, so Llamas helps him out. They realize it's a huge clam, and Hulumi notes that she's never seen anything like it, but they think it looks tasty, so they decide to cook it. Sui and Hidi join them, but they think the clam looks familiar, so they put out the flames, and Hidi sends it flying. Boxo wonders if it's a monster, but as it opens, they meet a girl named Petey, and we learn that she's the one they're looking for. They ride a boat, and Hulumi wonders how Petey carries her shell, so Sui reveals that she has a blessing, which allows her to change the weight of the things she touches. She explains that she didn't want to join Kelroy, so she sank herself into the ocean to escape, and she notes that she's waiting for the man who left her to return. Hidi and Sui think it will never happen, since he's a marriage fraudster, but she doesn't believe them when they tell her the truth. Boxo shows her a video of Solrum, and she notes that she recognizes her, so they explain that Solrum is a snow spirit. They think they can't beat her without Kikoyu, and Hulumi notes that Director Bear sent Scorch to help them, but they don't like him since he's too loud. He tells Petey to cheer up, but she freaks out since he's too close, and she shuts herself in her clam. Boxo realizes she's afraid of the outside world, so he tells her to try his sweets, and she starts to talk to him. She isn't sure she can help the others, since her power is only useful for defense, but he tells her he believes in her, so she comes out of her shell. She notes that she'll do her best to help them, but she hides when she sees Scorch again, so Boxo realizes he needs to teach her to come out of her shell. They see the island where she lives, but they can't see much since it's too far, so he transforms into binoculars, and Hulumi notices the boat of the Misfits. Kelroy's family hangs out in a hut, and Petey visits them, but Kelroy asks her about her companions. We learn that Boxo and his friends are using Hidi's illusion to disguise themselves, but she explains that they're her bodyguards, and Kelroy invites her to join him. She turns him down, but he notes that they should go outside, and he uses his eye breach to dispel the illusion. Everyone prepares to fight, but Boxo tells Llamas to bring out their survey, and she reveals that they asked 100 people in the Clearflow Lake what they think about the Misfits. The first question is about what they think of Kelroy working with the Netherlord, and she notes that most of them think it's unforgivable, but 12 of the people thought otherwise, since they know that he just wants to save his son. The next question is if the people think Filmina deserves better than him, and almost all of them voted yes, so she thinks she should have looked for a better husband. Llamas reads the last question, and Boxo looks forward to the Misfits' reaction, since they're about to find out if the people will forgive them if they apologize for their actions. 80 of the people said yes, and they even mentioned that they would help Kelroy if he asked them to, since they know that he just wants to save his son. He's touched by their answers, but Llamas notes that Shirley sent her a message, which mentions that the girls in her establishment already miss him. Filmina becomes angry hearing this, and he tries to come up with excuses, but she knows that he had fun with the ladies. Boxo and his friends are suddenly attacked by ice shards, and Solrum asks Kelroy if he'll betray the Netherlord, so he explains that he won't do it since they owe him a lot. He tells everyone there's no going back for his family, and Llamas notes that they can save his son without the Netherlord's help, but Solrum explains that they don't need to save him. She reveals that he's right beside her, and notes that she's the reason why he isn't in pain, but everyone wonders how she removed his curse. She explains that once snow spirits reach adulthood, they gain the ability to remove curses, but they can only use it when their target is close to them. She notes that the child's pain will return if they take him away, so Hulumi realizes she's taken him hostage, but she explains that she's just nullifying his curse, and Calroy is cooperating out of gratitude. She notices that they don't have Kikoyu with them, so she thinks nobody can stop her, but Calroy tells her to leave everything to his family. She thinks he's defying her, so she pushes his son away, and everyone watches him as he suffers because of his curse. Calroy promises to cooperate with her, so she nullifies the child's curse, and notes that she'll kill Boxo and his friends. Director Scorch suddenly lunges at her, so she calls him an idiot and freezes him, but he unleashes his flames to counter her ice. She can't believe he's a flame spirit, and Boxo realizes that Director Bear sent him, since he's the only one who can rival her powers. He takes Sorum away, and as everyone prepares to fight, Filmina tells Shiro and Akka it's time to reveal their true forms. They spread their wings as they transform into vampires, and Shiro and Akka take to the sky, while Llamas charges at Filmina. She breaks through her defenses and grabs onto her, but it turns out to be a decoy, and Filmina flies away. Boxo launches his bottled drinks at her, and she gets covered with liquid, but she realizes she can't control it with her water magic since it's lotion. She manages to land safely, but Llamas knocks her out, and Boxo is glad everything went well. Shiro and Akka attack Petey, who dodges their attacks and closes the distance, and she notes that she won't lose to them, since they were hired by the woman who stole her man. They wonder how she came up with that idea, and they attack her again, but she blocks with her shell, and they realize their mother has been captured. They think they need to buy time until Kelroy comes to help them, and they start to run away, but Boxo throws some interesting magazines at them, which makes them stop, but Boxo's friends tell him he doesn't fight fair, so he realizes they don't agree with his methods. As Miguel and Kelroy fight, Kelroy is impressed that Miguel has figured out his eye breach, so Boxo wonders if it does more than just break blessings. He wants to stop Kelroy no matter what it takes, so he threatens to blast Akka with his soda, and Kelroy becomes worried, but Director Scorch and Sorum suddenly destroy their surroundings. Boxo protects his friends, and they realize that Kelroy is using his eye breach to cancel out the blizzard, but Sorum tells him to get rid of Scorch's flames. They start to walk toward him, and Boxo and the others think they need to do something, so his friends rush forward, but Sorum and Kelroy suddenly disappear, and they take Boxo away. Boxo is teleported to the enemy base, and we see that Petey is with him, since she was caught in the area of effect. Kelroy tells him they're in the stratum where the Netherlord operates, and explains that they need Boxo to clear the dungeon since they lack food and materials, but he refuses to join them. Kelroy asks Petey to help them again, but she still turns him down, so he explains that he won't let them out unless they agree to help him. Shiro and Akka want to buy Boxo's goods, so he shows them his selection, but they realize it's 10 times the usual price, and he refuses to give them a discount. After that, Petey wants to use the toilet, so Boxo makes a tent where she can relieve herself, and plays music when she goes to bed. The next day, Kelroy can't believe Boxo turned their cell into a place they can call home, and Petey notes that she could stay there for weeks, but Kelroy asks them if they've changed their minds. They still refuse to join him, so he warns them that Sorum and the Netherlord might have them executed within the week, but they realize he's telling them they still have time to escape. Shiro and Akka beg Boxo to give them a discount, so he slashes the price of his goods, and they enjoy their meals. He realizes they haven't eaten properly, and he gives them alcohol for free, but they end up getting drunk, and they admit that they missed their friends in the dungeon. They reveal that the Netherlord's middle finger general is at the base, and Boxo wonders if there are monsters nearby, so they reveal that there are at least 100 of them. They mention that most of them are skeletons, but there are also humans in the base, who wear strange coats as they walk around. Filmina visits the cell, and tells Boxo to go with her, since Sorum wants to talk to him. They take him to Sorum, who orders Filmina and the twins to leave, so they tell Boxo to be careful and walk away. He wonders why Kelroy's son isn't with her, since he thought she needed to touch him to nullify his curse, but the boy suddenly runs to her, and he wonders why they treat each other like siblings. She calls the boy a good actor, since he was able to convince everyone he's suffering from his curse, but she tells him to stay close to her, because she can't nullify his curse if he gets too far. He's worried since Boxo has seen what their true relationship is like, but she tells him not to worry and explains that Boxo can't tell anyone the truth with his limited vocabulary. The boy wants to buy his goods, so she gives him coins, but Boxo thinks she's creepy since she seems overly attached to the boy. She starts to feel sleepy, so she leaves to take a nap, and the boy tells Boxo that he acts childish when she's around. He apologizes for deceiving him and explains that he's just pretending to be Sorum's friend so that he can collect information about the Netherlord. He reveals that even his family doesn't know the truth since his brothers aren't good at keeping secrets, but his parents told him about Boxo's abilities and he promises to help him escape. Boxo spends the next few days selling his goods to everyone in the base, and when he returns to Petey, she asks him if he has food. He gives her rice, and she tells him his food is always delicious, but he wonders why she's too close to him. Kelroy's family visits the cell again, and Boxo knows he'll have a barbecue party with Sorum the next day, because the boy begged her to let him join them. He thinks it's the perfect chance to escape, since he'll be going to the roof with Petey, but Kelroy warns him that the Middle Finger General is nearby. He notes that Boxo is so cool that he wants to leave the Netherlord, and the twins agree with him, while Filmina tells Boxo to record his reunion with Lammas. The next day, Kelroy's family escorts Boxo to the roof, and they tell him not to worry, since no one will be allowed to enter until lunchtime. Petey thanks them for everything they've done for her, and she uses her blessing to carry him to the roof, but Sorum threatens to freeze her if she tries anything. Sorum and the boy enjoy their meals, but she notes that she needs to go to the bathroom, and he decides to go with her. Petey tells Boxo it's their chance to escape, so he creates countless balloons, and Petey uses her blessing to lighten his weight. They take to the sky, and he transforms into a vacuum to create a powerful wind, which allows him to control where they're going. Sorum returns, and she can't reach them with her spells, but a huge monster comes out of the ocean, and it telepathically tells Boxo it's the Middle Finger General. It blasts them with its water cannons, but Boxo's barrier protects them, and he thinks it won't stop pursuing them unless they defeat it. He tells Petey to tie his balloons to her shell, and he creates concrete blocks to attack the general, which screams as the blocks hit it, and he removes his barrier before it can recover. He transforms into a supersized vending machine as he falls, and he crushes the general's back, which kills it in an instant. Petey follows him, and she's glad he's safe, so he realizes he made her worry since he didn't explain his plan to her. As they fly away, Boxo realizes he defeated the Netherlord's arm using the same method, and he hopes the fishes will eat the general, since his enemies will learn he killed it if they find its body. Boxo and Petey reach an island, where the locals recognize them, and they gather around them. Lammas rushes toward Boxo, but Petey gets in her way, and tells her she might hurt him if she isn't careful. He realizes she's sad, so he gives her flowers, and he's happy to see her smiling. Hulami wonders if he also has something for her, and he thinks giving her the same bouquet would be boring, so he gives her toy tools. Petey asks him if he doesn't have a gift for her, so he gives her a keychain, but Hulami and Lammas wonder why they're so close, so she explains that it's because of the time they spent together. After that, the directors discuss what to do next, and Bear suggests destroying the Netherlord's base on the Stratum. But the other directors are against it, since they'll be defenseless if the Dog Mountain attacks them. Director Bear talks to Boxo and his friends, and he asks them if Kelroy will betray the Netherlord, so Petey explains that it's possible if they can lift his son's curse. Petey notes that Sorum has taken a liking to the boy, and Boxo shows everyone a recording, which makes them realize she would never hurt him. A scout reports to Director Bear, and notes that the base has been abandoned, so Hulami thinks the Netherlord sent his minions to provoke the Stratum Lord. Director Bear mentions that they need to dig deeper, but a man suddenly interrupts them, and notes that the Dog Mountain is approaching, so Director Bear orders him to evacuate the civilians. Everyone panics as they see the Dog Mountain, and it creates a tsunami as it hits the water, so they run for their lives. Shim raises the ground with his magic, which protects the people as they evacuate, but Boxo wonders if they can stop the Dog Mountain, and Hulami asks the elders how they defeated it in the past. Yumi reveals that it ate everyone, but they survived and destroyed its internal organs, so Lammas thinks they should do it again. Shim is against it, and explains that it took months of planning to protect everyone from its stomach acids, which can melt people in an instant. Petey notes that she'll work with Boxo to attack from the sky, so Lammas tells him to be careful, but she leaves a dent as she touches him, and he doesn't fix it since it makes him feel connected to her. Boxo takes to the sky and attacks the dog mountain with concrete blocks, but it doesn't work, so he drops Hulami's magic items to freeze the water. He knows it isn't enough to stop the creature, but Shim creates a tsunami, and Boxo drops the magic items again, freezing the monster in place. He knows it's only a matter of time before it breaks free, so he flies away and uses the transfer circle to escape with the others. After that, the residents of the Dog Mountain Stratum move to the Clearflow Lake, where Boxo gives them a huge discount since he knows they're having a hard time. As he observes the locals, he notices that they've changed the way they dress up because of the fashion boom that followed the Goddess Grand Prix. He thinks that since everything's going well, the men will start to look for entertainment, which is why they're waiting for Shirley's shop to reopen. She hires him to help her find customers, so he waits outside her establishment, and she invites the men who approach him. They can't resist her because of her good looks, and she tells him to stick to their plan, but as he waits for other men to approach him, Gorth suddenly asks him about Shirley. He can't believe Gorth is interested in her, but realizes he knows nothing about her personal life, so he decides to look into her. The next day, Boxo gets his friends to help him out, and they wait outside Shirley's house, where Boxo hides his presence. He notices a group of suspicious men who try to break into her house, and Suko sees them, so she scares them away. Shirley hears her, so she looks around outside, but she doesn't find anything. She leaves her house, and everyone wants to know where she's going, so they decide to follow her. She heads to an orphanage, where she gives away money for the kids, and Boxo and his friends can't believe it, since they didn't think she was the kind of person who would do that. They discuss how amazing she is, and Boxo thinks Gorth doesn't stand a chance, since she's way out of his league. They feel guilty for following her, so they decide to come clean, but she tells them it's okay, and asks them to play with the kids. Boxo gives everyone food, and as they enjoy their meals, he's glad to see that they're having fun. Boxo and his friends leave the orphanage, and Llamas asks Shirley what she does on her day off, so she explains that she usually stays at home and lives a simple life. Boxo realizes she's the perfect woman, because even though she spends her nights with men, she's actually a good person who helps children. After that, Gorth asks Boxo if he learned anything about Shirley, so he shows him the suspicious men who tried to break into her house, and Gorth promises to look for them. Boxo also shows him videos of Shirley, and he realizes she's amazing, but he thinks she's too good for him, so he decides to just watch over her from a distance. A week later, Boxo notices that something is bothering Shirley, so she explains that something happened recently. She notes that her neighbors told her about the suspicious men who have been stealing her underwear, but she wonders why they stopped bothering her. Gorth suddenly appears, and he asks Boxo if the place is closed, but Shirley invites him to join her for a drink, so he becomes nervous. Boxo treats them to his drinks, so they start to drink together, and he knows he can't do anything since he's just a vending machine, but he still wants them to end up together. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.